Gotcha. Everybody get into meeting mode here.
I thought I saw Karen. Is Karen not here?
Karen's here.
Yeah.
She's in the building. When she comes out, we'll.
So yesterday, one of my 3 batteries in my car was no longer with us, so I had to go get the smallest one. Thank goodness.
Oh, just the 12 volt. Get a hybrid.
I have a hybrid.
Yeah, so it's just 12. It's the
Yeah.
it's the little
The little one with
Yeah.
the lighting and.
right. That's high.
Yeah.
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 What used to be the battery.
Hello.
Oh, Karen.
I'm glad you're here. She said she might not be.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. We saw you. The building. Okay. I'm hereby call this meeting of the Cambria Community Services District Board of Directors to order. It's 1:01 p.m. on the Thursday, the 20th. Would you please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All members are present, so we have a quorum. We have a pretty full agenda, so I will try to be brief in any remarks I make, and hopefully everybody else will respect the time that we have available to us and accordingly be as concise as possible. I don't have any report per se.
I'm not sure what you're trying
Other than that was Siri talking to me. I don't want to report per se, other than to note that it's a full agenda. I want to open agenda review, the next item, to the rest of the board members to see if any of the directors want to shift any items or delete any items from the agenda. Any requests for agenda adjustments? None. Okay, great. Move on to board member communications, which individual directors can give brief comments, updates on their activities, ask questions. Do we have any board member communications? Harry, Director Farmer.
Thank you, President Gray, and you're reminding me when I was like 6 years old or so forth, and the fellow would come on every Sunday morning and read the comic section of the Herald Examiner, and Dick Tracy was always first, and he had that two-way phone thing that he could talk into, his wristwatch. So, Dick Tracy. Anyway, so that's one of 3 announcements. Actually 4. In exactly 48 minutes, and it's 47 minutes now. And I want to thank Director Thomas for allowing me to make this announcement that at 1:51, yes, we were going to have the summer solstice, so the longest day of the year, and the sun is shining here, and so how blessed are we. Coming up this Monday, by the way, right here at the Vets Hall from 6 until 8 p.m., there's going to be a presentation about the offshore wind farm that's being proposed off of Cambria and Morro Bay. So if you'd like to get some information on that, including the impact that it's going to have on the marine life and perhaps the financial costs as well, feel free to show up. Like I say, that's from 6 until 8 p.m. this coming Monday here at the Vets Hall. And then the following day on Tuesday, there's going to be an open house at the healthcare district where our ambulances are stored, so you can tour the facility, learn more about the facility replacement project, and you can meet the folks that are on the board of directors of the CCHD and meet with other folks from the community. So there we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Any other board member communications? Hearing none, we'll move on to public safety reports. I believe we have Commander McDonald from the Sheriff's Department.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Members
Welcome.
of the board, members of the staff, and public. For May 2024 in Cambria, we responded to one assault and battery report that was domestic violence related. We had 16 disturbances, 7 general disturbances, 4 loud music complaints, 2 neighbor disputes, 1 party call, and 2 fireworks calls. And I'll talk a little bit more about fireworks at the end of my presentation. We had 0 burglaries. We had 2 thefts, both of which were petty thefts of a value under $950. We had 3 vandalisms. One was damage to school property. 2 of them were graffiti, which I'll also touch on at the end of my presentation. We had 1 mail theft reported to us. It was in the 300 block of Layton Street. But upon investigation, we determined that to be an unfounded complaint. There was somebody loitering around mailboxes. However, it was found that they were not stealing mail from that location. We did not have any phone scams reported to us. However, as I've said in the past, with the proliferation of scam attempts, we do need the public to report those attempts to us so that we can gather information with which we can develop strategies to help combat that. Suspicious circumstance calls. We had 4 suspicious circumstances and 1 suspicious person call. There are deputies that work in the Cambria area conducted 24 enforcement stops, which included 21 vehicle stops, 2 pedestrian stops, and 1 bicycle stop, and 19 preventative patrol activities, which included 10 on-site activities, 3 extra patrols, 1 patrol check, and 5 parked vehicle checks. So I said that I would speak more to fireworks and graffiti. And there's another issue of reckless driving slash racing. So last night at the North Coast Advisory Council meeting, we had a fairly extensive conversation about those issues, and they all affect Cambria proper. So I would encourage anyone that is interested in those topics to look at the recording of that meeting, where there's some information sharing that went back and forth. From that exchange, I was able to gather some information from the community that has spurred my ability to adjust some resources, hopefully with the ultimate goal of preventing the activity. But if we can't prevent it, at least maybe get some enforcement on specifically the fireworks. So in May, we had fireworks. There were two reports of the same incident on May 27th. And then again, on June 17th, we had a significant firework event that generated 4 reports to us for that event. And then unfortunately, last night, we had another firework incident that was in an area not similar to the first 2. But all of these are occurring at a fairly consistent time of the evening, and so that allows me to just make an adjustment in some time so that I can have a car remain here in Cambria for that window. It's important that anyone who hears fireworks, sees graffiti, hears or sees what sounds like reckless driving and stuff, report that to our dispatch center. The more calls that we get populates our database, which allows me to look at those calls when they're coming in, when the activity is occurring, and then that allows me to do those adjustments in resources so that we can hopefully be in the right place at the right time for, like I said, prevention. But if we can't prevent, then at least we're there for enforcement. So I would encourage members of the public, when they do see things that aren't of an emergent nature, to call our dispatch center, and the phone number for that is 805-781-4550. You'll get a telephone tree, and you're looking for option number 3, which will connect you to a dispatcher in our dispatch center who can get deputies dispatched to the area immediately.
Okay.
With that, that's my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns.
Thank you very much. Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I didn't call or tell anybody, but I wanted to put it out there that someone who looked like on Facebook that they were a small farm in Cambria was advertising that they had a flat of eggs for $12 and it was on sale for $10. Through a long process, which I should have recognized red flags and red flags and red flags.
Right.
I did send them money on Venmo, so I've reported all that. It was $10, so it's not a huge thing. But when I went back to Facebook to try to find her again, her name was Ruth Martin. There was nothing there anymore, and I accused her of, this is fraud. I'm reporting this, right? When I looked, she shared 3 friends with me, but those friends were from different parts of the United States. It was real scary. So just to let you know, there isn't a farm that's selling eggs around here for $10
right.
for a flat.
Right. Now, and it's important that the community understands what these scams look like,
Yeah.
right? So the more we talk about them, the more educated we all become and become more resilient to protect ourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Farmer.
Yes, very quickly. Thank you, President Gray. I just want to thank you, Commander McDonald, for including the calls for service of the other, smaller, unincorporated communities. I think we brought that up last month. So thanks for doing that.
Oh, absolutely, and we'll continue to do that into the future.
Yeah, it's just nice to see that comparison.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question about graffiti. Noticing a lot of it all of a sudden, actually, in various parts of town, and I've noticed it on road signs, for instance, at near Burton and Ardath. And I had called the CHP on that, because assuming it was a road sign issue, and they would take care of it. And they said they would look at it. But 2 questions I have is it always good to call the sheriff if you see graffiti on, say, on a sign, for instance? Or
Yes.
That would be, you're the ones to call.
Yes, that's appropriate. They do traffic enforcement. We do criminal enforcement, and graffiti is vandalism. So it's in our part of the book, so to speak.
Yeah. Check out the corner of Ardath and Burton. There's a couple of signs there.
And a couple of things. Yes, we want to get in there and document it, but we also have the ability to work with county roads who have the ability to clean signs. We also have our own graffiti abatement program that we can send that information to and hopefully get that cleaned as rapidly as possible. Graffiti is one of those things that if you let it linger, it invites more.
Yeah, and I was always noticing that there's an outbreak of it, not just on those road signs. Off our monument sign over here near us, right around the corner, had it, and other places in town. Our sign that on Fern Canyon, the entrance to Fern Canyon, got vandalized the same way. Is there any reason there'd be such an outbreak of it all of a sudden?
I can't answer that. I was asking my deputies the same question. One of them suggested maybe it was TikTok, but it is not isolated here to Cambria. We're seeing an outbreak throughout the county, and we are aware that there's been a sudden bloom in Cambria.
Yeah.
So And we are working some leads. I can't guarantee that we'll shut it down immediately, but again, I do encourage everyone to call in and report that so that we can add pieces to puzzles and maybe come to the source of where it's coming from.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Oh, Dr. Thomas.
Thank you, President Gray. And yeah, just following up on your conversation from last night at NCAC, perhaps you could share to what extent this appears to be, organized with the.
Oh, the graffiti.
Right.
So what we are seeing on a lot of the graffiti is some form of the number 13, either written 13 or with the Roman numeral X3. That's gang culture, and it refers to Southern California-based gangs. It is my own opinion that that is probably more gang emulation than gang formation. However, it is something that we're always concerned about when we see something that looks like a gang tag. And so the more information that we can gather about who and where this graffiti is happening, the better we can evaluate the sophistication of the people who are making the graffiti and whether or not they are truly moving in a direction to be a gang, a more sophisticated gang type lifestyle than rather than emulating for the current craze kind of thing.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Commander McDonald.
All right, thank you.
Next up is our Fire Chief, Mike Berkey.
Did you want to take public
Oh,
comment?
public comment. Yeah, let's you can probably stay seated. Is there any public comment on the Sheriff's Department report?
Yes, from SB.
Thank you.
Hello there. My name's Sherry Brysich, and I have a public comment about one of the agenda items for the tax roll to put delinquencies on it. And also I could speak to the graffiti. I've actually
graffiti, yeah.
seen people doing it under a bridge, and they were kind of middle-aged, and they were kind of, not what you'd expect. So they looked like they were older and Caucasian. So I just thought I'd mention that I saw that before, but do you want me to talk about the other thing too right now?
The other thing is that later on the agenda, you can talk about it at that point, I think.
Okay, thanks.
Commander McDonald, do you have any comment on the people paint spraying under the bridge?
I'm not, so there was one incident in the last 2 months where it was reported to us in progress, and we actually got there and cited, wrote tickets to the 2 people that were involved. So I'm not sure if it is that same event that she's referring to, but again, the sooner that you can alert us, sometimes it does make a difference.
Thank you. Yeah, any other public comment online?
No.
Any other public comment from people in attendance? Okay, then I'll move on now to the Fire Chief's report. Chief Berkey, welcome.
Good afternoon, President Gray, members of the board, members of the staff, members of the community. I'll keep this as brief as possible. I know you guys have a heck of a board meeting today. So for the month of May, we have a total of 76 calls, 1 fire, 50 rescue and EMS, 4 hazardous conditions, 8 service calls, 9 good intent calls, 3 false alarms, and 1 severe weather and disaster call. So that concludes this portion of the report. I did want to add that Ms. Dotson was very kind enough to put up on our website. Hopefully you guys are able to view it. But if not, this is the information time. A monthly stats of what I kind of wanted to move forward of having. One, it being up there for the month, and it will be updated throughout the month. But for you guys to view. And then also this would mimic the report that I would be giving at this meeting as well. I really don't want to print this out because it's about 5 or 6 pages, so I'd rather keep it electronic if possible. But I just wanted to show this as an example of what we can do, and then have you guys discuss it on your own time, whatever you guys liked about it, didn't like, and so we can adjust it to whatever you guys, what your needs are. And please feel free to ask me after you guys discuss it, because there's a lot of things we can do within limitations, of course, but there's a lot of information that we can give you that hasn't been reported in the past. So I just wanted to throw that out there, throw that as an example, and I'm open for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Yes, any questions from directors? I have no questions either. Is there any public comment on this item from either attendees or online?
No.
Okay, thank you. I guess we're, that was a brief report. What's it?
Well, I
Oh, yeah, Vice President Scott.
thank you. I already talked with Matt about this, the general manager about this. But on the top left-hand corner of the second page of your report, it has percentages where it says incidents by the day of the week, and I got out my calculator and I divided that percentage by 76. So I could figure out how many incidents there actually was. It would be helpful, since you have the percentages on the left-hand side, if you would put the number of incidents at the top of the of each of the bars.
Oh, you're talking about the days of the week?
Incident by days of the week, yes. So for
The
instance.
numbers of how many, okay,
Yeah, the incidents, because it's a whole incident.
Okay.
Right.
Well, and I'm hoping that what Ms. Dotson just threw up on there is what we're hoping to go to. So this wouldn't be the report anymore, that would.
I think it was up there.
It was on there, it wasn't this, it was a different bar. And
Right.
so, so the incidents of day, I can't remember if it shows it on there or
It
not,
doesn't
but
matter, you can check it out later, but I
Okay.
just thought that would be more helpful for me.
100%. I can make that change.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much, Chief Berkey.
Thank you
I
guys.
just wanted to thank.
Karen,
Chief-
yeah.
I just wanted to thank Chief Berkey for his report.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your report, yes.
Appreciate it. Have a great day.
We move on now to public comment on items that are within the purview of the CCSD, but not on today's agenda. I have one comment request from Christine Heinrichs. So Ms. Heinrichs, you might want to come forward and speak.
Thank you. First, let me give a shout out to Director Harry Farmer for public service. After last week's meeting, when I mentioned the poison ivy, he went out on Friday and the poison oak and removed that poison oak from the Main Street Bridge. He didn't make a phone call. He didn't work up a presentation for another meeting. He solved the problem. Bravo. General Manager McElhaney said he would keep the public informed of the costs of the recent dispute with Coast Union School Board. I'd like that report if possible. Was the $10,363 paid to District Council Carmel for additional legal advice over and above his $13,500 monthly retainer for advice on the CUSD well dispute? Was the $9,006.50 to Rutan and Tucker part of that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from attendees? Any comments online?
Yes, Elizabeth Benhausen.
Ms. Bittenhausen, please continue. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like the board, or you in particular, to respond to my letter to you of the 23rd of May, 2024, and the accompanying report of water use. The unaccounted water for March and April 2024 is 16 acre feet, or 21.52% of the water pumped, which is twice as much as the CCSD goal of 10%. The amount for January and February was 19.51%, again, nearly twice as much as the CCSD goal. Why is this much water pumped and not paid for? Is any action forthcoming to change the goal of 10%? Or is any action forthcoming to change how much water is lost every 2 months? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment?
No.
Okay. Yeah, in regard to water consumption and billing and pumping, I think during the utilities or manager's report, we might ask the question about that. So we might be able to take that up a little later. Any other public comment here online? Any written, just have, there's any written comment, you don't have to, I'm not going to read it, but was any written comment received on this topic?
Yes, one from Douglas Bell, and it's posted on the website.
Thank you. And it's posted, we state the name, but it's posted on the website, so it can be read there. Thank you. Can move on, I guess, to the manager reports. Speaking of managers' reports, so we start out with the general manager's report. Mr. McElhenney?
Thank you, President Gray. I'll follow in line with Fire Chief Berkey, and I'll keep my report fairly brief since it's here in the agenda packet noted. I will just bring up a couple things outside of the report. I also will be covering for Mr. Aguirre, who is currently knee-deep in weeds with chaps on and you name it, so he won't be here to give his report. We met with the Coastal Commission and county representatives on the 17th of June, which was this last Monday, and had a very productive conversation going over the latest draft of the project description. We received some good feedback there and had some excellent dialogue and had pretty much their support in moving forward with the process if the board was to approve it today and submit it to the county, that their continued questions on the project description, we would work in parallel with the Coastal Commission and county staff to address those. A lot of their hangups have to do with mitigation that hasn't occurred. Our belief, county's belief, the mitigation is not an operational scope, which is mostly what this project description is, and it's an operational document. So we're going to work with Utilities Manager Green, work with the Coastal Commission, work on updating our adaptive management plan, and start working towards some resolution to those mitigation efforts. So again, productive conversation. Outside of that, my report stands as is. I will note that Mr. Aguirre's report really focuses on his lot maintenance. So he's out there today. He's done about 47 lots. He's done 50. Well, I've done 50 lots in the past 4 days. He's looking to tackle another 30 lots within the next week and a half. So he is back on track per Mr. Aguirre. They completed some of their fire breaks from the top of Huntington to the wastewater plant. The West Ranch fire break was completed last week, and they're still doing some mowing around the ranch, which will occur next week. They're working with the Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch on some invasive spraying. And again, they are working very diligently to meet our weed abatement deadlines. And with that, I'm open for any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the directors? Director Farmer.
Not necessarily a question. I just want to comment on Mr. Aguirre. I was out yesterday and saw somebody, who's that person weed whacking over there? And I saw, a district truck, and it was David. And he was weed whacking this very large lot from street to street. Took an hour, and it was him doing the work. So I just wanted to comment on that. He's quite the fellow. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Director Thomas.
I just wonder if this is a better time to respond to the question on the accumulated costs with the SR4 well negotiations, or is that better under the expense report?
I can address it now if you'd like, Director Thomas.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
So some of our updated invoices for Rattan and Tucker, and currently we are only using Rattan and Tucker for the SR4 well negotiation. So if there is a charge to Rattan and Tucker, you can assume it is for SR4 well negotiations. To date, we are at $34,524 for just Rattan and Tucker. And Mr. Carmel's invoices are a little more difficult to parse when it comes to SR4 versus other litigation and personnel matters. but our estimate at this point was last month we were at 14,200. And this month there was another more charges in addition to his monthly retainer in the range of $10,000. We can assume that about 5,000 to 6,000 of those were attributed to the SR4 well negotiations. So for Mr. Carmel, we are around $20,000 in costs associated with SR4 and $34,524 for Rattan and Tucker.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director Dean, Vice President Scott? Okay. I'll open up this topic to public comment. First of all, is there anyone who wishes in attendance here who wishes to comment on it? Ms. Dodson, anyone online?
No.
Okay. This is the manager's report, not the other stuff. And then I guess we go on to 5C because we covered 5B with Mr. McElhenney's report. 5C Finance Manager's report, Ms. Fritz.
Thank you, President Gray. So in the packet, you'll see the Finance Manager's report for June. And my main highlight for this, I mean, we have the budget, the preliminary budget coming up later on. And so our focus has really been on working towards that. One thing I want to highlight is the utility billing customer portal that we have implemented. There's language in here just explaining what the portal is. You do have an option. I wanted to just highlight some of the questions, frequently asked questions that we've seen. This portal, you do have the ability to pay online with a credit card or a debit card, but you do not have to pay online if you sign up for the portal. There's many other features in the portal that we're saying I think it's good for all customers to sign up for it. It's completely free. It's where you can look at past bills, you can download your bills, you can look at usage, it has historical usage, all of those kind of things, which will only become more accurate and more to date as we're implementing the new meters and registers. So the portables are a really good feature for everyone, and it is completely free for you to use. If you choose to pay on there, there is a service fee for using a credit card, so you can do that. And then one of the big things that people have had questions, people who are signed up for us to do auto draft on their bank accounts, that is not being touched. That's all still in place. That did not get taken away. So I think the questions have died down a little bit, but I just wanted to reiterate that here. But we did help, have a lot of questions about that, as well as Mrs. Dodson and I will be in the Vets Hall on June 24th. We've done it one day already to help people if they want help signing up for the portal. We're here with laptops and we can assist anyone to sign up and answer questions. And we're here all day from 9 to 5. So yeah, that's all I had to say. And I'm here for any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the directors? Director Dean.
Is there a service charge for auto draft from the bank account?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Director Farmer.
Yeah, I just want to ask very quickly, thank you. Ms. Fritz, with regard to being here on the 24th next week to assist folks, is there a way that's being publicized out on social media or anything like that?
Yes, it's on our website. I've sent it out on social media for the last 3 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's been in the GM letter.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also like to add really quick, I forgot this, with this new feature, we can take credit card payments in office, which is a big deal too. So that's a new feature that we have, and we hope to incorporate on. People can pay waitlist payments in the office or through this eventually. So more functionality to come.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions from the directors? Yeah, I just had a quick question again regarding the auto pay. The auto pay draft service there's no charge. Can you do one-time payments in the same, in other words, not for with a credit card or a debit card, but directly your checking account? Do you have a one-time payment option?
I believe we do, because we have a form you have to fill out to do an auto draft. So you have to reach out to our front desk clerk, Scott Steck, and he can sign you up and then I assume take you off right away. If
Which is
you
not the
just
same
wanted
thing,
to do
yeah.
one time, but because there is a form you have to fill out for us to do auto draft.
Okay. Any public comment from those in attendance here or online?
No.
No, okay, thank you. I'll move on to the next item, which is Utilities Manager. Utilities report from, I think, Mr. Reaper. Mr. Reaper or Mr. Green?
I'm ready to provide that report. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you, fine.
Good afternoon, board. Thank you. This is the utilities report for May. We'll start off with wastewater. We had an unexpected power loss from PG&E on May 9th. Fortunately for on-call response in 20 minutes, we had backup generator power to both the wastewater treatment plant and lift station B4, critical areas in our treatment or our distribution process for the wastewater there that were active. Our new hire has received Class B training and is being awarded his Class B endorsement for his license so he can operate the vac truck, which is fantastic. During the course of May, we also jetted over a mile and cleared over a mile of wastewater distribution line, and 800 feet of those lines were camera inspected. Also, during the month, we had a failure with our cyclone separator, which is the tool that is in line with our wastewater treatment, which kind of vacuums the water from the solids, and the solids then go to the screw press. Fortunately, we had parts and so forth in stock, and we were able to take that offline for one day and make repairs and put that back offline without interrupting any processing during that period. Water, as the ground's drying up, we're starting to experience some small service leaks. I think we had about 6 service leaks that the water staff responded to, some on the customer side, some on the district side, and we made repairs and put in some new line. Also, we had a contractor, which I'll definitely advocate for, calling 811 and locating the utilities around you. But we had a contractor fail to do that and hit our line not once, but twice during that month of May. Even after we had gone out to the site, told them we'd make repairs and remove the portion where they were going to install this utilities, or where they were going to install their landscaping around our utilities. So they were turned into 811 for a violation. And we'll see what comes about from that. May is also a preventive maintenance kind of time of month for water. So we're maintaining fire hydrants, we're getting pressures, checking disinfection residuals, making sure the on and off valves work, and we're clearing around them for fire and accessibility for our fire department. So that way they can obviously shut that on or hook up in case of a fire or event such as that. So I'm available to answer any questions. And
okay, thank you. Well, first, any questions from directors? Director Thomas.
Thank you, President Gray, and thank you, Mr. Green. Just on page 25, quick question. The delivery date was targeted June 10th for the meter heads. Do we have those in-house now, and have we started popping them on?
Thank you. I'll provide that update. So we did receive 1,600 endpoints from Badger on the 10th. We need the registers as well. So the registers are due to us. Actually, the arrival date is today. I'll check in with our superintendent later this afternoon. Usually our large deliveries, because we're on the northern coast, are later in the afternoon. As soon as we receive those, we will start the process of installation in-house with a good majority of those that are not reading currently.
Thank you. Dr. Dean.
Okay, Dr. Bentonhausen brought up unaccounted for water, and I was just wondering if any of these water leaks or water breaks contribute to that.
Well, water main water leaks, yeah, are always a contributor to unaccounted for water loss. This wasn't in the month of May, but the first weeks of June, we had USA Utility Staffing Associates come out, and they did a third of our distribution system. So that's about 23 miles. found no leaks. They do acoustic sounding and monitoring from above, and we found no leaks in the system at that time. The good doctors prepared these numbers for years. I'm not sure where she derives her math from, but they have never lined up with our actual accounting that we provide to our regulatory compliance agencies. So our EAR, electronic annual report that we just submitted, which has our water loss, was at just under 11%.
Thank you.
Dr. Farmer.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Mr. Green, with regard to this incident where the contractor twice did some damage, and so it says here, damage to, a 2-inch steel water main. Staff responded immediately to repair the damage. So with regard to this contractor, is he going to be billed for the cost of staff having to repair that damage?
Yeah, that's our intention. We're following the processes that need to be done. There's some rogue contractors in our community and that come from out of our community and come to this community that I think know to dial 811 and choose not to. But the fact that we pointed out this 2-inch line and said it's right here, majority of it was above surface. So the fact that they ignored that is why we're seeking actually damage in, for our staffing hours, for the equipment used and the parts utilized to repair that. So absolutely.
Thank you.
And Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. On page 24, there's a picture of an owl.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a furry little thing down there next to it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a gopher?
I believe so. Yeah. So
And-
they have owl boxes there. This is at our SFR well, so it's at the high school. There's owl boxes, obviously, to maintain the vermin there that cause holes in their, beautiful turf field. And this one had got its lunch or breakfast that morning and got trapped within our kind of wellhead assembly right there.
Yeah.
And we did call the county. County humane came out and freed the bird. And he did take his lunch with him at the end of the day, but nobody was
Good.
harmed except for the vermin, which is what I think the attention that foul is for. So yeah.
Yeah. So
We just
thank
thought
you for
something
thank you for
interesting.
thank you for taking care of our wildlife.
Thank you. Yeah. I had a question just to follow up on the Ms. Bettenhausen's and Director Dean's questions about the differences between build numbers, build amounts in a given period and pumping numbers. I know what her methodology is, and it's what I do sometimes too. I just look at the go to our financial reports and add up the gallons of use, or units, I'm sorry, the units that are billed in all the categories for a 2-month period, and then compare those to the total amount consumed. And you do get these numbers, like sometimes large discrepancies, like 16%, 20%, and so forth. And you say that in your reporting, our reporting to the Water Resources Board, we around 11%. How do you explain that discrepancy?
Sure, absolutely. So my technical way of explaining this is kind of like your checkbook. You write 6 checks out there, some cash right away, some take a little bit longer to cash. So in some of those months of billing periods, we're adjusting, and some of those adjustments aren't accounted for. Our production dates are basically from like midnight on the 1st to midnight on the 30th. Mm-hmm. And those billing account dates kind of ebb and flow over that. Again, once we have AMI metering and our billing all integrated and in accord, you'll see a more accurate representation of unaccounted for water loss.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So,
General Manager McElhenney.
Thank you, President Gray. I just wanted to advise the board that Mr. Green had vacation scheduled months ago, and as agenda items are in flux, one of them being our CDP and utilities report, he had this vacation scheduled, so he is actually on vacation right now, but nice enough to attend the board meeting and to be present for our CDP discussion. So his trailer in the background is not his office, but it is for today. So we appreciate him attending.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for letting me know. Thank you for letting us know about that, because it makes me appreciate Mr. Green even more than I already do. And we might be asking him some more questions too, obviously. But thank you. My thanks to Mr. Green and to everybody else who's answering our questions. Is there a public comment on this item in the either among the attendees or online?
Yes, Elizabeth Benhausen.
Well, Ms. Bettenhausen, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and also for your following up on my question. I want to ask something because it's very unclear to me. Is the billing summary accurate in the published report of the billing summary on the website? And I ask that because it's the only, and I mean ONLY, report of usage we've got as ratepayers. That I will repeat that. It's the only report of usage that we have as ratepayers. It's the only place I can find the distinction between residential and commercial. And why should I use another source given it's the report, the source that's given in the written report every month is speculative. Speculative. And is there a report that is not speculative in addition to the billing summary? So I'm getting more and more confused. As you know, I've done this reporting for 10 years. It's getting a little repetitive, but I'm getting really good at doing the math. It's the same thing over and over, 10 years. I mean, that's quite a few. But I'm getting more and more confused the more Mr. Green answers the question, because something isn't clicking. So please, Mr. Green, even though you're on vacation, even though it's a very nice trailer that you've got there, make it click a little better. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
No.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if Mr. Green wishes to comment on that.
So there's several reports we have that are annual reports. We have our electronic annual report, which, I mean, it's just a public document. We can provide that to you at any time. We also have our water loss efficiency report, and that has to be verified and certified by a third party that has all of our billing and consumption data integrated into that report that we can provide you. That's a more effective illustration of unaccounted for water loss.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No further comment or questions? We'll move forward to, Director Thomas.
Yeah. Thank you, President Gray. I'm still a little perplexed by the Ms. Bettenhausen's claim that the data in Mr. Green's report is speculative, and I see hard numbers, so I didn't understand that. I don't know where to go with that, though.
Maybe terminology is a little bit inexact. I don't know. We just could leave it at that, I think. And now, with no further questions, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All matters on this consent calendar are to be approved by one motion. And if any director wishes to discuss a consent item other than with simple clarifying questions, please, you can speak up and have it pulled for separate consideration. Anyone want to do that? Okay. So at this point, Dr. Farmer.
Yes, a couple of quick.
I'm going to ask for questions too. You're free to, it's a question, it's not a poll.
Yeah, it's just something off of the expenditure report, expense report.
Okay.
So just a couple of
it's fine.
questions here at the bottom of page 41 from Applied Process Logic Incorporated for admin consulting and training CCSD teams, $14,500. And then on page 47 under Gladwell Governmental Services, phases 1 and 2, records retention, scheduling, and training, another $8,000. I know we have extremely talented staff, for which I'm totally grateful for, So I'm just curious as to why this training is taking place. And it's like I say, it's no reflection on anybody. It's just my curiosity as much as anything. And then I have one more brief observation. Thank you.
Anyone on staff want to respond to that?
Absolutely.
General Manager McElhenney.
Thank you, President Gray, Director Farmer. So they're interrelated but separate. The Gladwell and Associates was already board approved for our record retention schedule updating. So that is them working with us on what records can be done away with. I think we've discussed it before about how we have a lot of paper documents that are in storage that are costing us, I think, anywhere between $1,100 and $1,200 a month to store in San Luis. So we're in the process of this records retention schedule, destroying of records that are no longer needed, and then digitizing records. If we take a look at the AP logic, so we have monies budgeted for technological upgrades in last year's fiscal budget. AP logic is going to help the district after moving from a hard server at the fire department to a cloud-based system. In that process, we've realized with over 2 decades of digital files and computer files and Windows systems that there's a little bit of a mess to clean up in terms of the organization of some of our digital files. And so that can create liabilities for the districts when we talk about public records requests and things of that nature. There are liabilities there. So AP Logic is a consulting team that we hired to come in and reorganize and remap all of our file systems. And they're going to work with each one of our department heads and staff that work with those department heads to reorganize all of our filing systems.
I guess the only reason I brought that up is because members of the public say, well, more consultants. So I just wanted to clarify that, that's all. And also under Amazon, just a quick observation. So I notice down here near the bottom, Vets Hall Coffee Pot and Water Pot, $278. And then up at the top near here, Conference Room TV, $289. So it's kind of interesting that a coffee and water pot are about the same as a TV now. So conference room TV at that. So I just wanted to draw that comparison as technology moves along.
Thank you, Director Farmer. That TV, we were reimbursed for that TV because that was at the district office where the water leaks came from the actual building. So the property owner reimbursed us for that TV.
Cool.
Thank you. Dr. Thomas, you had a lot. Oh, yeah, you're on. Okay. Oh, Director Dean. Yeah, Director Dean.
Okay, I just wanted to point out on page 72 that our elections are held at large, not by district.
Let's see, 72.
I saw that, Director Dean, and we'll make that change on the application when we submit it.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Any other questions? Brief observations. Yeah, Dr. Thomas.
Yes, brief observation on the on 6D on page 81, the Workplace Violence Prevention Plan. We have the acronym IIPP that's nowhere to find in this document. So let's not make everyone hunt to figure out that this means the Injury and Illness Prevention Program. I had to hunt for a bit, but that would be good to revise that to indicate that.
Where is that specifically?
On page 3 of the plan, page 84 in the agenda packet.
Okay. And it is
where you see, second half of the page.
IIPP.
Double I, double P twice.
And it's injury.
It's the Injury and Illness Prevention Program.
Okay. 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 Thank you very much.
Also on page 5, just wanted to bring up the, perhaps it's a paradox, perhaps it's not, but the classification of the, of 4 types of workplace violence. So the bottom of page 4 states that, and then the top of page 5, there's the 4 types of violence. And as you read those, they're clearly not mutually independent. And for example, type 3 violence, or type 4, many of these types of violence could have be classified into more than one of these. And just thought it's worth checking, is that the intent and is that understood by the authors of this?
I would say is just before we go on, that sounds like we're broadening the discussion a bit to the content of the actual measure. If you want to take it separately.
It's sort of a question of like, is that understood and does it matter?
General Manager McElhaney.
Yes, thank you, President Gregg, Director Thomas. I'll consult with our legal team. They're the design of this document. It's a new legal mandate that's supposed to be in effect July 1st. They've constructed some more of these documents, so I can connect with our legal team when they come to do the training, and if we need to make small adjustments to the document, then we can.
And that's an easy follow-up revision,
Right.
if needed.
If needed.
That's not
for now, I guess we.
substantive.
Yeah, right. Okay. Any other questions? We have at least one. We have one request for comment, public comment, from Christine Heinrichs to start. Ms. Heinrichs?
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to draw your attention to a couple of items. Mr. McElhaney is advocating for cost cutting of the $3,720 for AGP video recording and archiving of board meetings, and he's already cut the $1,275 for professional janitors to clean the public restrooms. Both these responsibilities would be assigned instead to in-house staff, as restroom cleaning already has been done. That $5,000 a month is dwarfed by other district expenses, such as the legal bills he's recounted, over $30,000 just last month, the nearly $50,000 for the usual PG&E bill, and the over $14,000 in confidential professional consulting and coaching. AGP's professional video and audio services are not easily replaced by staff members who lack expertise and training. Professional janitorial services keep the restrooms presentable for visitors and allow facilities and resources staff to focus their energies on important district properties. Please consider reducing other expenses before cutting these important services. Thank you.
Thank you. No, go ahead. Come forward. Ms. Dickinson?
Just a real quick follow-up, and
Yeah.
I think I've mentioned this, Tina Dickinson. When I listened to the Finance Committee meeting, I think it was May 28th, you were trying out a setup here, the Finance Committee, using some different audio system. I could not understand really any of you in the Finance Committee at that meeting. So if the public cannot understand you, that is really problematic. You have to be able to be heard, and we have to be able to be heard in a meeting. And so, I mean, that really shouldn't have even happened, in my opinion, in that scenario, without any warning. It just happened, and I don't usually attend those meetings, finance meetings, but I found that rather odd, as I find a number of things odd. And the other one that I will make reference to is the R&I Committee cancellation of their June 10th meeting. I sent item 4B to Steph Wall, Creeklands. She had no clue that it was on the agenda. I mean, you have in there in the agenda 4B Creeklands and an agreement that was to be made, and yet Steph, who represents with Tim Delaney Creeklands, wasn't even aware of that item. Now, suddenly, on Saturday at 4:02 p.m. in my inbox, I received an email saying the meeting had been canceled with no reason given, but I checked with a member of the R&I committee the next day, I think, and he said, oh, it was due to a lack of a quorum. So what was it? Was it because Ms. Wald contacted the district to ask why it was on the agenda and she had not been notified? What? I don't know, but we need more answers, and we really need way more transparency. It just isn't good enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I respond?
Dr. Dean.
I had no idea about this interchange with Steph Wald when I canceled the meeting. I canceled the meeting because I did not have a quorum. We have a vacancy, and I had 2 members out on vacation. That is why I canceled the meeting. Yeah, I emailed everybody to find out if they were going to attend. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Director Dean. Any other public comment from attendees?
No,
Any public, and none online?
no.
Thank you. For entertaining a motion on the consent agenda, I would just note that we can include two corrections. One is on the item 6C, changing the designation of our voting from district to at-large. And on page, I think on item 6D, the first reference to the IIPP should be spelled out as the Illness and Injury Prevention Program. With those changes incorporated, I'll ask for a motion to approve adopt the agenda, approve the consent agenda. Director Dean, yes.
Okay. I move that we adopt the consent agenda with the 2 changes just described by President Gray.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Dean, seconded by Vice President Scott, that we approve the consent agenda with the changes, corrections as noted. A roll call, please.
Director Dean?
Aye.
Vice President Scott?
Aye.
Director Thomas?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
President Gray?
Aye. Okay, thank you. Moving along to business, regular business. Actually, no, this is hearings and appeals, which of course is former business. The first hearing is to receive community input on the draft project description for the water reclamation facility coastal development permit application, and then directing staff to file the draft project description with the County of San Luis Obispo Department of Planning and Building staff for final evaluation, input, and direction. This is a continuation of a process we started 3 months ago, I think, with a similar public hearing. Today we have before us a draft we want to send to the county if we all approve it. And so this is kind of the wind up of the actual public input. And we will then proceed to have the county take it up from here. And, hopefully it'll be incorporated into a new permit, long sought coastal development permit for the WRF. So first, to start things off, I'll turn this over to our general manager to initiate the presentation. And we may have some other people obviously entering in on it, but Mr. McElhaney, maybe you can start.
Thank you, President Gray. As mentioned, you have opened the public hearing for agenda item 7A, public hearing to receive community input on the draft project description for the water reclamation facility, coastal development permit application, and direct staff to file the draft project description with the County of San Luis Obispo Department of Planning and Building staff for final evaluation, input, and direction. We've talked about this for quite a while now. We finally have arrived, and that's a testament to staff and the board's commitment, ad hoc's commitment to moving this process forward. So we thank our consultant staff, SWCA or SWCA as we call them. They've worked with us. We've been working with the county. We've had conversations with the Coastal Commission, and now we're here with our final draft project description. I can go over a little bit of the history of the WRF if you want in the staff report, or I think everybody's pretty well versed in it, and we can go straight to questions if you like.
Maybe a little of the history of the application process, just where we've come, when it started, and not so much obviously every blow by blow of it, but just to explain where we are in the process of getting there.
Sure.
But it's kind of a progress report, basically.
And correct me if I'm wrong on my dates, because this was prior to my arrival, but I believe in 2020, we submitted an application to the county for a coastal development permit. An information hold was placed on that permit with several requests to staff in responses to questions about the project description. I arrived in April of 2023 and started working with our previous utilities manager, the Coastal Commission, and gathering that info hold information. Our previous utilities manager left on or around September. Mr. Green came in, and that's really when the ball started rolling on gathering a lot of the information as it applies to that information hold. We realized through essentially a hybrid draft from CDM Smith and staff in terms of the previous project description that it just was insufficient. And so we had money budgeted, and we hired SWCA to help us with this project description, as this is their field and they're pretty familiar with that, and they've worked with a lot of our regulatory bodies. We started reworking the project description to address some gaps in there, again, informed by meetings with the county and the Coastal Commission. We brought it to the board for initial review. There were comments made there as to some vagueness about the project description. And since that last meeting in which we presented, or excuse me, the last hearing, we've been working diligently on cleaning up the document in coordination with our ad hoc committee. And we stand before you today with the hopes of having you direct staff to file and submit our application for a permanent coastal development permit to the County of San Luis Obispo.
Well, thank you. I'll turn this over to questions from the board members. Who wants to start? Oh, Vice President Scott.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I just want to make sure that it's understood, because it's what I understand. On page 110, the second paragraph under discussion, it says the WRF should be operated proactively yet conservatively to prevent water shortages from escalating to emergency levels. This can only be done with a regular coastal development permit. My understanding is that the operation of this, of the WRF, of the WRF, the board will have some input into how often it's utilized and based on what parameters it's utilized. Utilize, is that true?
Yes, we'll have to be guided, and some of these discussions go towards our budget capability. So obviously, brine concentrate hauling is not cheap. And so that is a cost prohibitive measure to us running the water reclamation facility. So that's why we're working on the zero liquid discharge pilot project. And obviously under this emergency permit, we're only able to run it in stage 5, 6 droughts, which staff believes it's almost too late at that point for the running of the water reclamation facility. So what the utilities manager and I have discussed, along with some of our consultants, is that there could be a proactive approach to running the water reclamation facility as we enter into those dry periods to supplement that aquifer, so we don't have a sudden drop into the drought, if that makes sense. Now, the only way that really can happen is if our budget can handle those types of things, and that would be board approved. So I believe that there will be some operational parameters that the board will guide us in terms of how much we can be spending on the operation of the WRF. And so it is staff's ultimate goal to make sure that this is as cost effective as possible.
Thank you.
Dr. Thomas.
Thank you, President Gray. And yeah, just following up on Vice President Scott's comment makes me reflect, right, you don't wait till you're out of coffee to get more coffee. You don't wait till the power is out before you buy an emergency generator. And we don't want to wait until we're in an emergency situation before we're able to run the equipment we have. I've got a few questions and comments. On page 15 of 20, page 126 in the package, we have the PFD, the process flow diagram. The version we saw most recently, there's a table. You notice there's a bunch of diamonds with information, with numbers. And each of those numbers is a point in the process flow. And prior to submitting to the county, I'd like to see that either added or maybe as a separate table so that anyone following the process flow diagram can see which each of those numbers were. I dug back to find, I think it was July 13, 2023 in the package. So Harry, what page are we on? It's 15 of 20.
15 of 20 of the document.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Director Thomas,
Yeah.
do you mind turning to page 150 and tell me if that is what you're referring to?
Page 150.
Agenda page?
Agenda
I
page
think he's talking-
150.
He's on 126, right?
150.
There's several things we're talking about here at once.
Absolutely, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, this has the,
Question answered. The process flow diagram numerical description is on page 150. Check. Well done. Thank you.
okay.
Boy, I
There's a
hope
lot of
they
stuff
all
in
go
there.
like this.
Yeah.
God, that'd be awesome. So also, next comment, and this is not a revision. I just wanted to, it seemed like a good time to remind everyone that the project description enables the CCSD to conduct operations as described, but does not require us to operate it until we need to. If the ZLD, if the zero liquid discharge technology does not pan out, further action will come to the board prior to investment or initiating operations. Is that correct?
I believe it is, yes. Mhm.
Absolutely. And also, as we work through this submittal process with the County of San Luis Obispo, they will be in conversations with the Coastal Commission. And so we will have to be working out various concerns related to the operation of the WRF, not just in terms of cost of brine disposal, but how it affects our environment. So that is going to be a continuously monitoring process on our riparian habitat and the overall environmentally sensitive habitat in that area. So, we're a long ways away from any interpretation that the board is going to cut staff loose. We're going to pull, turn the on button on, rip the cord, and fire this thing up and just let it run. So we are going to be under the purview of the board and working in lockstep with the board on the parameters for how this is operated.
Gives us plenty of time to get public engagement prior to that point in time. Next question is on page 18 of 20, page 129 of the overall package. Under monitoring wells, I think that there's just a minor correction that needs to be made because we have MW1 listed twice. And I believe we mean, it's MW1, MW2, MW3, and then MW4, and then MW1 again. And I believe we mean the injection well monitor, the MIW1. So that's a minor correction.
Correct. And I've spoken with our team and we'll make that adjustment. I believe there's some other areas on the project description where we are missing, I believe it's monitoring well 4 from the map. So we need to put that in there. And then is it D16?
Exactly. Monitoring well 16D1.
That needs to be placed on there as well. So we'll work with SWCA on, or I'm sure Tristan's very handy with these types of things. I'm sure we can place a dot and annotate that on those maps as well.
And the kind of last question, it would be maybe useful to hear on page 19 of 20, second to the last, near the bottom, where it says operating and maintenance, maintaining the WRF requires on-site full-time staff, although the advanced water treatment plant is designed to operate with minimal operator intervention. And it just sounds like a contradiction within a sentence, although it's probably not. Maybe just a bit of explanation on that logic.
Sure, I'll probably turn that over to Mr. Green. He knows the operations of the WRF a little better than I do.
Mr. Green?
Yeah, thank you. Well, the plant is autonomous and it can be run remotely and it has fail-safe shutdowns in it. The Division of Drinking Water has expressed their concern that while it's operational, that we have at least a T3 operator on site controlling operations and the treatment processes. During full operation. So that's what we're referring to there.
So it's more in the nature of backup then. Just monitoring the process is an automated process, but somebody should be there just in case, right?
Well, I think they still view it as
Yeah.
a new plant. Obviously based on the acre feet it's yielded so far. And it's in their view, it's still in its inception, and they'd want a full-time operator there monitoring and viewing all. I mean, each train has about 17 different analytics to look at while processing. So I would advocate for having an operator on staff too, full-time there while operating as well. So.
Thank you. Dr. Thomas, you'll review again.
So it's sort of like still in the engine break-in phase. Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Farmer.
Thank you, President Gray. So a few items here to reference on the first page, page 110, the second paragraph under discussion, halfway down where it says, 9 years after funding for the project was approved by ratepayers. If I remember correctly, the funding for the project was approved by the Board of Directors on August 4th, 2014, after actually about 24 ratepayers got up and all protested the funding of the project. This project was never approved by the ratepayers by a vote or in any way, shape, or form, including that meeting at the Veterans Hall here. Also, with regard to, and there's a number of things I don't want to take a bunch of our time, on page 115, first, second, third, just above where water reclamation facility infrastructure construction begins, it says here, the CCSD commenced construction on the EWSP on August 25th, 2014. I guess this is a semantic thing, but obviously the CCSD didn't do that, CDM Smith did, but it wasn't on August 25th of 2014. It's also stated, by the way, that same date on the next page. But if you go to page, I believe it is 123, which is the correct date from my memory, except I think it's still 2 days off. Let me find it here real quick, and I'm sorry to. Page 123.
Construction commencement, you're saying, yeah.
Page 123, where it states down near the bottom, construction commencement, May 22nd, 2014. I believe it's actually May 20th. But so there's quite a contradiction here between the date that it began and also because it states here, well, the construction actually began on May 22nd. It didn't begin in August. And especially because it says here, construction of the EWSP occurred over, this is on page 116, over approximately 6 months. Construction began on August 25th, 2014, and was substantially completed on November 14th, 2014. Obviously, that isn't 6 months. I know it sounds like I'm being like really picky here, but I'm finding these little items that to me are either contradictions or inaccurate comments. So that's just part of what I'm looking at. Also, on page 130, which I know Director Thomas alluded to earlier, under water reclamation facility hours of operation. It says here, during normal precipitation years, it is anticipated that operation of the WRF would begin in July and run until September. And there's more there, but let me just ask this. We've had this project now for 10 years. Sometimes the amount of rain we get is below normal. Sometimes it's above normal. Fortunately, most of the time it's been normal. We haven't had to run this facility. So why all of a sudden are we anticipating operating the facility from July through September when so far it doesn't appear that we've even needed it? And this is just going to be more expense for the district. Now, I understand what Director Thomas said earlier. You don't want to wait till you run out of water to go get more water. However, we are talking about normal precipitation years, which usually allows for enough water storage where we don't need to operate the facility. Does what I'm saying here make any sense?
Anyway, yeah, General Manager McElhenney, yes.
This is just giving us a range of parameters in which the WRF could run. If the WRF doesn't need to run, I imagine we'll not be running the WRF. And again, the board can set those parameters. As to the dates in the document, I can confer with Mr. Green. I know that a lot of this information was pulled from reports and given to our consultants. That's an easy fix if you want us to change some of those dates as noted by Director Farmer. But again, it's just showing the range of time, the time periods in which it could run. And again, the board will have a say in that. Ultimately, we're moving forward so that we can run it as deemed by staff and the board. And that can only be done through a permanent coastal development permit.
Any other questions, Director Farmer?
No, not for right now. Maybe a little later. Thank you.
Okay. Director Dean.
Okay, I just wanted to address the sentence that Director Farmer pointed out in 110 where it said funding for the project was approved by ratepayers. This was not a vote. This was a Proposition 18 for the funding for this, and the Prop 18 protest failed. And my recollection of the meeting with the finance agreement being signed was there's closer to 40 people that spoke. I may be wrong, but yeah.
By the way, you're referencing, pardon me, Proposition 218?
Yeah.
Okay, it sounded like you just said 18. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry. I said Prop 218. Sorry. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So would it be prudent then to rather than on page 130, where it says would and would and would, could it be could instead of would?
I don't see a problem with that unless Mr. Green has something else.
Because then that communicates what we're saying right now.
Yeah.
Works for me. Mr. Green, are you still on the line?
Yeah, Mr. Green, is that feasible to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Yeah, because the point is that we have the option of doing it. We would have the option of doing it. We don't have to do it, but we do have the option. Dr. Thomas.
Yeah, and we're getting into the discussion. We'll want to hear public comment, but just on that, the first would make sense. During normal precipitation years, it's anticipated that the operation could begin in July. Makes sense. The next sentence, it doesn't make sense to make that change, I don't think. We're not saying that WRF could be staffed. This is a description of a scenario.
Yeah.
So the scenario is that it would be staffed on that basis.
Sure, that's
So I would suggest.
The real equivalent would be the next paragraph. In response to a prolonged dry season, the WRF could run up to 24 hours per day. That's kind of that's the equivalent statement, or the parallel to it. Yeah. Any more questions? Okay. I will open this to public comment. First of all, we have a request from Christine Heinrichs to speak on this. Is she here? Ms. Heinrichs? She's not. She left. Okay. Tina Dixon.
Thank you, President Gray. I really didn't want to be here today because I have to say that what you are about to, I assume, approve today is what is not before you is a completed application, just like it wasn't in 2020. And I've sent you, I know it was late, before, it was before the meeting started, I've sent you about 5 pages of comments and quotes from agencies, including the State Finance Department, who came down here and did 3 days of audit on the Prop 84, 4.3 million. and recommendations were made, and they have never been adhered to. And so I may go back to the DWR and say, you know what? Like I brought to you before, maybe these folks didn't ever deserve the 4.3 million because they have not followed what you said and what other agencies have said to the district. And so what I see before you is an incomplete application. It does not fulfill the requirements that have been made either of county, from what I have put in here, or of the Coastal Commission. And you've had these meetings apparently, but I'm not really seeing where they're going. So I would say that the CCSD has not provided evidence in the CDP application that it can supply the amount of water it is claiming to produce. The pumping rates the district anticipates using and the amount of time it hopes to run the facility during non-drought periods make absolutely no sense. Remember that Mr. Warren has 203 acre feet right up alongside of one of the district's wells at the facility. That has to be accounted for. So if in the event he's running his well and the district's running their well, then what could happen at the high rates that the district is projecting? They're not reasonable, and they could end up in a worst case scenario drying up the aquifer. We can't have this. It just isn't going to work, and I can't see the county. Maybe they will approve it. Of concern also is the CCSD's inability to address the issue of brine waste disposal. While a zero liquid discharge pilot study is anticipated, it is premature. The study has not begun. There is no available data to draw from. So to be asking SLO County to approve an untested method to address brine waste is putting the cart before the horse. While the pilot study may not be a cost factor itself, the study to the community, should it become a method to dispose or eliminate the brine waste, the energy costs are prohibitive. This should be especially troubling as the CCSD is pursuing, environmental issues, as CCSD is pursuing a climate crisis policy.
Excuse me, Ms. Dickinson, your 3 minutes are up.
Oh gosh, this is such a huge issue.
But
And how many people are here to speak on it? So
well,
I
we'll
wanted
see.
to read 2 sentences.
We'll
Two
see.
sentences,
No.
may I have it?
No, thank you.
Really? That's how much you care about what the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers in attendance? I got 2. Mr. Lyons first.
Thank you very much. Mike Lyons, Cambria. I'm a very happy man today to see the progress of this draft report onto the possibility and probability that we will have a good hearing at the county on this issue. I am very grateful to the current board, who I think have really spearheaded this effort, and especially to the very transparent general manager and his staff, who seem to have taken on board very professionally the direction of the board itself. And I should have known that the redoubtable James Green, was in the background. I'm sorry I didn't know he was there, but since I met him several years ago when he first started here, I can tell you that his 5 gold stars have always remained on his forehead as far as I'm concerned. You have some very good staff members. I appreciate them. I do applaud your push for the permit, and I agree that the effort should be towards running the plant when we like to do it, when we feel we need to do it. I would like to see as few conditions on the licensing that we can possibly achieve, including not being so rigid about the dates and times of the possible could or would operation of this plant. So I wouldn't mind seeing you do that. Proactive is a very good word to use for being able to get out ahead of a water crisis. We're probably going to have more droughts, and we should be prepared for it. Well, the last thing I'd like to say is I applaud very much the idea of the zero liquid discharge, the whole engineering concept of it. Putting aside the cost of it, at the moment, you have to balance that with the cost environmentally and financially of trucking the brine to the south coast or possibly even even the canyon over there by Highway 5. It's an extremely high cost, both in terms of actual environmental destruction, as well as the cost of the trucks and all that, including the danger of increasing highway traffic. Now, right about this time, I want to apologize for what I'm about to say, because I'm violating my own pet peeve, which is for people to come up here who had the chance to be at various meetings all across this spectrum of many years, but lately I haven't been attending them. I would have had the chance to contribute the next thing I'm about to say. So don't you hate it when people get up here and say something that they should have said in meetings that they could have done? I hate it myself. But this is not looking backwards. This comment that I plan to say is looking forwards. The famous Jim Greshams said to us in a private meeting one time, never let go of that pond unless you absolutely have to. We all realize...
Mr. Lyons, I'm sorry.
Oh.
3 minutes.
All right, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, great.
Never let go of that pond if you have to. It has a good use in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I don't want to be, interrupting people, but the 3-minute rule, especially on a day like today when we have a large agenda, is very important to abide by. So make sure you notice the time you're taking and get your comments wound up, in a expeditious manner, so you're not having interruptions at the end. Anyone else wish to speak? Mr. Dujic.
Thank you, Mr. President and board and staff. I want to applaud the board and the staff, particularly Mr. McElhaney and the rest of the staff, Mr. Green, for recognizing months ago that this really had to be an interactive process, that you really needed to get in front of the Coastal Commission, you needed to get in front of the county. I can't speak to historical issues of other folks who may have had, or other agencies that may have had concerns, whether those concerns have been taken care of or not. I can't say for sure. I would expect so, based on the comprehensive work that I've seen so far. So that's tremendous. I will say that I was a bit disappointed to see that only 4,075 of the existing commitments were identified in the document, as opposed to a number that would also reflect CCSD's waiting list, as was proposed earlier, given the testing and the looking forward. I certainly can understand how you got there, given the pressures that I'm sure you're receiving from the Coastal Commission and from the county. So I'm looking forward to working with Mr. Green and with the general manager and the board on identifying what Mr. Green likes to call the portfolio of available resources that the district needs to really assure its sustainability and long-term viability. And there are a lot of options, as we've talked about, for those things going forward. And I hope that the board and the staff will, again, recognizing that those items cannot be addressed in this document, but will separately address those issues of sustainability, long-term development activities that are well thought out, well controlled, well understood going forward, and that portfolio of resources is developed. And we've talked about what some of those are. Direct potable reuse, obviously very, very viable option for the district. Various Whale Rock Reservoir, other options as well. So again, I'm looking forward to, again, I understand it's going to be aside from this document, but I know there's a lot of folks who are going to be very disappointed by this document, but nonetheless, hopefully let's all work together going forward to do what we can to expand the portfolio of resources so we're not just relying on Two Creeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comment from those in attendance here? Ms. Dodson, any comment online? Oh, wait, is Mr. Howell?
Thank you, and I'll be very brief. Just as a reminder, mostly to the folks out here, but also to everyone, that we have to deal with the situation as it exists now. We do not want to be prisoners of past mistakes, and we need to let go of past conflicts. We need to start from where we are. And the other thing is we don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So I'm looking forward to this going forward to its next step. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dodson, any online comment?
Yes, Lauren Crosby Swartz, followed by Elizabeth Benhausen.
Well, thank you.
Mr. or Mrs. Schwartz? Schwartz, yes.
This is Crosby. Good afternoon.
Ms. Crosby.
President Gray and members of the board and staff. The June 20th, 2024 draft WRF project description states the facility can produce 425 gallons per minute of purified recycled water to augment the community's potable water supply during dry conditions. We recommend adding the following information to the project description to establish the supply limitations of this project. I know these are numbers that kind of are boring, but I'll go through them really quickly. Number one, what is the pumping rate of secondary treated effluent into the percolation pond? For example, 400,000 gallons per day would equal 278 gallons per minute. Number two, what is the pumping rate at the 9P7 WRF supply well? For example, it could be 258 gallons per minute to match the percolation pond recharge. Number three, what is the pumping rate at the 9P4 Warren Ranch well? For example, 20 gallons per minute would represent his 6-month historical average. Number four, what is the pumping rate of microfiltered water to maintain lagoon flow? Example, of course, is 100 gallons per minute, which is our goal. Number five, what is the pumping rate into the WRF reverse osmosis section? And that's a little complicated calculation, but it's the efficiency 94% of the water that's left over after you take 100 gallons per minute into the lagoon and 20 gallons per minute to the Warren Ranch. And it equals the 158 gallons per minute. And finally, what is the injection rate at the injection weight RIW-1 injection well? And that works out to 145 gallons per minute, which would be 19 acre-feet per month. I've also attached a WRF system diagram from Todd Groundwater marked up to show water flow rates in gallons per minute based on the 400,000 gallons per day recharge into the percolation pond. A flow diagram like this added to the project description would help clarify what happens when the WRF is operating. I submitted a written comment I'd like to have included in the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, all written comments are included in the record. They won't be read here, but they're included in the record and is available online with the agenda. Any more comment? I think Dr. Bettenhausen was up, right? Yeah, Dr. Bettenhausen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Draft of your project description for the coastal development permit for WRF is incomplete. A major flaw rests in the absence of any data on the zero waste discharge facility during its pilot run, which has not yet been started. It is projected for October, 4 months from now. A draft for the CDP must not be submitted before the pilot run is completed and analyzed. If the pilot run turns out negative, the hauling by truck of waste is speculative at best. Your draft reads, quote, until the ZLD pilot project is completed, it is unknown how much concentrate will be produced during normal and dry year operations, end of quote. If such an important aspect of ZLD is unknown, that is another reason for declaring this draft premature. The draft is also vague in defining several phrases having to do with the purpose of the plant. For example, on page 9, the third component reads, operation of the WRF up to 24 hours a day, 5 days a week for 7 months maximum during the normal and dry precipitation years, end of quotation. The draft discussion of the draft reads, the staff discussion of the draft reads, quote, the WRF should be operated proactively, yet conservatively, to prevent water shortages from escalating to emergency levels, end of quotation. What does this mean? The discussion under hours of operation on page 19 does not answer my question. In the chart of changes we read for the emergency permit, quote, existing authorized water connections, end of quote. For regular coastal development permit, we read, quote, the WRF would initially serve to satisfy existing connections. As part of future operations, evaluations will be conducted through research studies, biological assessments, and consideration of impacts on other stakeholders. These assessments will determine whether the WRF is sufficient to fulfill existing commitments, end of quotation. If the WRF initially serves existing conditions, what connections, excuse me, what environmental and economic consequences lie in what pertains to other stakeholders? Such a question is essential but not addressed in this draft. The delivery of lagoon water raises similar questions. For example, it reads, quote, the quantity of lagoon water delivered depends on the results of monitoring and surveys performed under the imaginative management plan, but is anticipated to be 100 p.m. when the creek is dry.
Excuse
The whole
me, Dr. Bettenhausen. 3 minutes are up, please. Hello? 3 minutes are up, I'm sorry.
Christine Heinrichs is
Thank
next.
you. I just want to make sure she got the message there.
Hello, yes.
Hello,
Thank
Ms. Heinrichs, yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for bringing up points about the fact that the ratepayers did not approve funding for this, and many people were objecting, and that is easily available to people through the archives of AGP video, which makes Cambria's past meetings easy to access through its archives. It's well worth that $3,720 a month. A point that hasn't been addressed yet is the fact that the adaptive management plan that's included in this CDP is from 2017, and it was inadequate then. None of its recommendations have been carried out for establishing baselines. The district had a contract with Merck and Associates, that was supposed to be done in 2022. That was never carried out. I don't know why. That was never clear. In the utilities report, it says that work is ongoing and a completed report is due in June. I look forward to that. I think that definitely needs to be included in order to evaluate this application. The original construction included 2 new transformers that were installed. How much power is this expected to use? How much will that add to Cambria's $50,000 monthly bill? The Coastal Commission does not recognize any grandfathered connections. That decision was made in the Haitian decision. They're clear on that any grandfathered connections were long ago extant back in the early 2000s. This is the desire to expand use of this to new connections has always been the sticking point. If the project description were limited to existing connections, the project would have a better chance of getting a permit approved, as Pablo Ogren explained back in 2019. General Manager McElhaney says that obviously trucking brine waste is far too expensive for the district ever to employ. Then why is it in there? Why is this even being discussed? I mean, that seems to be unexplained. Zero liquid discharge, there's going to be costs of millions of dollars, whether it works or whether it doesn't. So I think that this definitely needs to be considered. The board needs to grapple with the fact that this is an extremely expensive and energy intensive project, regardless of how the zero liquid discharge works out. So I look forward to you
Thank-
getting those biological reports done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Heinrichs. Any other online comment?
Christina Galloway.
Ms. Galloway?
Hi. Two things. I just wanted to state I agree with the could and the would that you guys discussed in the beginning and making that change. I think that that would be helpful. And I think any further clarification as to who the stakeholders are. I know the stakeholders were, referenced in the project description, and just so the community can have a better idea of who exactly you're referring to, that would be helpful. So those are my two notes.
Thank you. Ms. Dodson?
We have no more.
Okay, no more comment online, and no one else wants to comment who's in the hall here. I'll bring it back to the board for discussion. First of all, I think it'd be helpful if staff or General Manager McElhaney or anyone else and staff would want to respond to any of the questions that were raised in public comment.
President Gray, thank you. I can do it just from a 10,000-foot view.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Some of the comments about the brine disposal, why is it in there? Well, if we want a permanent coastal development permit and we're looking at a pilot program, we have to have an answer to the brine disposal, which for us right now is brine hauling. So even though we don't want to pay the exorbitant cost of brine hauling, it still needs to be an option in the project description, and that's why it's there. Do I want to pay for the cost of brine haul? Absolutely not. But if we come to a situation where we have to run the water reclamation facility in any form or fashion, that has to be on the table if the zero liquid discharge pilot does not work. We've engaged county multiple times with this project description, so I understand that some folks think that this is incomplete. We've worked with the county, we've addressed some of the concerns, and this is an ongoing process. So as we submit it, the county will be in contact with us if we need to address any part of this project description, and that will be done in parallel with conversations with the Coastal Commission. So what Mr. Howell said, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, that's can't be said any better than that, in my opinion.
Thank you. So over to the board. Dr. Dean, you had your hand up.
Okay, I just wanted to point out that on page 3 out of 20, the Warren allocation is listed under our water demand, so it is included in here. We have addressed it. The other thing is with the zero liquid discharge, it is on the agenda for R&I to have Clark Easter come and do a presentation and give us a lot more information on the zero liquid discharge. Right now, the R&I committee meeting is scheduled for June 8th, but we are considering changing it to June 15th.
In July 8th.
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
sorry,
July
yes.
8th.
Yeah.
I'm a month behind because I was out of the country. July 8th, we're considering changing it to July 15th. So when we appoint someone to the vacancy, they could be part of the discussions. So, and I'll know for sure if we're changing it when one of our missing current committee members comes back from vacation.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Farmer.
Thank you, President Gray. Just following up on what Ms. Galloway was commenting on a few minutes ago. This is on page 113, page 2 of 20, about halfway down the first paragraph. The WRF is primarily designed to meet the current demands of the community and ensure reliable water supply for the existing service connections of the CCSD. However, as part of future operations, evaluations will be conducted through research studies, biological assessments, and consideration of impacts on other stakeholders. Who are those other stakeholders, just out of curiosity?
Director Thomas.
Well, thank you.
Are you finished, though? You might have more questions. You might let Dr. Farmer finish.
I just asked for an answer to that question.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Thomas.
Yeah, I had that same question, and then I read the next several paragraphs, and it's, I made note, it's pretty clear that that means There's the wet connections. There's 4,034 existing active service connections that have drawn 520 acre feet per year average. And then it talks about the dry connections, those 36 non-active service connections that that were referenced just a few moments ago, that perhaps the Coastal Commission would challenge, but that would consume estimated less than 4 acre feet of water per year. And so those two together are what is referenced here as the commitments, the 4,070 connections that would draw approximately 524 acre feet per year. Am I reading that right?
That is correct, Director Thomas, and I'll just add that, the term stakeholders, in my mind, and Mr. Green, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're also thinking about state parks. We're thinking about, other regulatory agencies that have interests in our habitat and our environment. And so these other regulatory bodies, whether it be the Division of Water, state parks, Coastal Commission, those are other stakeholders that we will obviously be consulting with for any change in future operations.
Clear. And in comments, as we're drawing water in the dry season and impacts on the Warren well and the 203 acre feet allotment, well, if we're in the situation where we are able to run this facility proactively, and again, we want to remind everyone, we're not proposing to install it. We have this bloody thing. It's in along San Simeon Creek. So if we are able to run it proactively, it will alleviate that challenge to some degree. We don't know how much because we haven't had the ability to run it proactively. And the comments about, well, we haven't run it in the last 10 years during normal seasons or dry seasons or wet seasons. It's because we only have been permitted to run it under stage 5, stage 6. So of course we haven't run it during normal conditions. But once again, what getting a coastal development permit enables us to do is defend our water for the community on a proactive basis. And no doubt before we initiate operations, we'll have conversations, but we can't even get to that point until we get this permitted. So getting a permit is essential.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Yeah, Director Farmer.
Well, thanks for letting me know who the stakeholders are. It'd be nice if there was a little bit of an explanation as to who those stakeholders were in this particular document, because I'm not bright enough to know who they were off the top of my head. On section 7, on page 308, section 7 under corrective measures.
This is the AMP, the adaptive management plan you're talking about now. Right, okay.
So it says here, adjustments to SWF. Is this pertinent, by the way, to what I'm about to read from this particular section of this agenda item? Is this pertinent to what we're discussing right now, what I'm about to?
It's pertinent, though. It's not something that is up for approval today, because this is something that was submitted that has already been. This is an older document. It's pertinent, but we're not voting. I don't believe we're voting on an AMP today.
No, President Gray, this AMP has already been developed.
Yeah.
Now, there has been, in some conversations with the Coastal Mission County, we may need to update the AMP to address some of their comments and concerns. But again, that is something that happens in parallel with the submission of this document and us working with our consultants.
Okay. Well, we're probably going to be taking a break in about 7 minutes, give or take. So I just wonder if I could just read something from here. Is that all right? Can I do that?
Sure. Of course.
Okay, under adjustments to SWF operations, and these are like environmental concerns. The amount of groundwater being removed by the new facility may need to be temporarily reduced or suspended should monitoring determine potentially adverse riparian impacts were projected to occur. This measure should be considered if groundwater and/or surface water levels substantially drop to levels outside of historical ranges and significantly impact habitat. And then further down it says under increased soil moisture content for riparian plants. Should plants along the riparian corridor exhibit stress due to lowering of groundwater levels, irrigation to increase moisture content may be deployed. This adaptive measures may include the use of a water truck or above ground irrigation piping to increase soil moisture content. Additionally, the CCSD may periodically alternate which percolation basin they are using in order to place percolated water closest to plant areas showing signs of stress. Maybe I didn't need to read that second part, but the first part with regard to adjusting the use of the facility when it appears that there's less water available for the needs of the plants as well as the animals. I don't know why maybe I'm just way off base here, but supposedly we're like running this facility in an ESHA zone when things get problematic with regard to water availability for the community. But then it also says that if circumstances get problematic for the living creatures, flora and fauna adjacent to San Simeon Creek, that we might have to reduce the operation of the facility. If I'm misstating what I think I just read, then that seems to be a kind of not a contradiction or a complication with regard to, well, when do we operate this if it's impacting the natural environment? That's maybe I'm misinterpreting what's being said here, but I just feel slightly confused, that's all, which other people have noticed for a long time, but that's just how I'm feeling right now.
General Manager McElhaney, you want to respond to that?
Thank you, President Gray, and thank you, Director Farmer. Those are all fair questions. I think what you're actually reading there is our commitment to say, if we're running the water reclamation facility and through our adaptive management plan and monitoring processes, we see an effect on the riparian habitat and our environment, we slow down our production numbers or stop. And so sure, that can happen, but that's actually what we want to say here, is that this is our process for monitoring how this facility operates. And if we infringe on or start to harm our environment, this is our mechanism to say, hey, we recognize it, we've identified it, and we're going to stop it. And that's a part of what the Coastal Commission will want to see. Just, it'll be a lot more in depth as we get to perhaps modify this adaptive management plan moving forward to address some other concerns, especially with mitigation that's yet to be determined. But you're not reading it incorrectly, but I actually look at it as a positive statement. Is this is what we commit to do as the district in these operations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I definitely appreciate what you're saying there. I guess my only concern is, I guess I've already stated it, when things get problematic for the flora and fauna, because they're obviously already problematic for us, we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place with regard to the use of the facility. That's kind of how I feel from this, but I appreciate what you said with regard to what the district is expressing our concern for the environment, so thank you.
I want to, hopefully we can vote on this pretty soon, but more discussion. Dr. Thomas, do you want more to say?
Thank you, President Gray, and thank you, Director Farmer. And I'm glad you brought this up, because the AMP, the Adaptive Management Plan that we've established, I've read this a few times, and I don't think I could possibly vote in favor of the CDP if we didn't have this. This is our plan for keeping eyes on the environment to assure that the operations of that facility do not cause negative consequences for the flora and fauna. So this gives me, in other words, in a plan, do, check, act cycle, this is the check to be sure that we've got, measures in place.
Yeah, I wanted to second that too, because this is a statement, in the AMP itself is meant to be a statement that we put the environment first. This is, I mean, that, if that wasn't clear, the Coastal Commission would never approve this, the county would not approve it. State agencies would not go along with it if we didn't have a environmental, as it were, kind of a check, as Director Thomas puts it, on the activities of it. That's a given, and we flesh that out in the AMP. I want to move on back to the document at hand that we're dealing with here, though, and I would suggest within our discussion, I might make a suggestion right now in anything we do is in a way of a motion. There are some changes that were either in errors in a couple of spots and a change I think it was suggested that I think we all kind of agree on. In the latter is the change in the wording on page 19, the second paragraph from the bottom of would to could in the first line. And the other one was a mistake, an error that was spotted on page 18 of the document. In the third paragraph, in the list of wells, MW1, MW2, 3, 4, and there was MW1 again as MIW1. Those two changes should be in there and included in the motion to approve. I have a question about.
In addition to that.
Yeah, but yeah, you found another. Yeah, excuse me.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, in addition to that, identifying well 16D1 on the maps.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, identifying the correct well 16. Okay. Those are three changes, and then yeah, Director Dean. There are a couple others that were suggested.
And we also need to put monitoring well 4 on the maps. It's missing on some of the maps.
So these if Ms. Dawes can get all these down, these are the edits, as it were. I had a question about, not a question, but I think a possible interpretation of the different dates for the start of construction, as I recall it. There was a period of engineering, of pre-construction that started in May. We didn't have the loan yet for actual construction of the facility itself. That did start in August because we got the loan, and I think on August, the meeting was on August 4th or something like that. And but there was a $500,000 that was allocated, I believe it was, some figure like that, for engineering, pre-construction activities, and I think those did start immediately after we got CCSD got the emergency permit on May 15th. So I think both dates in a way are correct. And it may be best to leave them alone because that one has to do with the actual physical design. The physical construction by CDM Smith started in August. The other was their CDM Smith's activities in engineering and site preparation and so forth. It started in May. As to the comments about the voter approval or the ratepayer approval, it's in the staff report. If it's not in the document, leave it alone because it's a complicated issue. And there's, it wasn't a vote, it was a protest process about the rate increase for the loan, in which protest failed, but it was not strictly speaking, a vote. But if it's only in the staff report, I think leave it alone. Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And also, attachment number 7 is the draft adaptive management plan, but it doesn't say draft anywhere on this document.
That is something, Mr. McElhenney or Mr. Reaper or Mr. Green, it's a draft. Was it a draft was it ever submitted as a final adaptive management plan? We never had the permit. We never had the permit application done yet, so maybe it was a draft. Maybe it still is a draft.
My interpretation of it, Mr. Green can clean up on it. Since we haven't really, well, we did submit it in 2020, and I imagine the adaptive management plan went with it to the county. So, Mr. Green, can you help me clarify that?
Yeah, so it's an adaptive management plan that's been approved by the county, and it's a living document. So basically, we need to make some revisions to it as per coastal approval, but we also need to operate to see what our parameters are. To speak to Director Farmer's concerns, when we talk about reducing pumping rates, we'd also increase pumping rates to the confluence, which is Van Gordon and San Simeon Creek. right there to help that flora and that fauna rehabilitate during those times. So these are things that we're including in that AMP and that will be submitted.
In some ways, it's best to call it a draft because it's a dynamic document which is subject to change.
Thank you, President Gray. That's the best way to put it, is that it's a living document. There will be adjustments made. Because obviously, if we find out there's portions of the adaptive management plan that are not working, we'll make adjustments to the adaptive management plan so it does work.
I'm just saying it doesn't say draft anywhere, but the attachment says draft. So that's just me.
Okay. Any other, I mean, I guess I'll entertain a motion because those are all the changes I could think of that we want to make. Dr. Thomas.
I will move that we direct staff to file the water reclamation facility coastal development plan application with the County of San Luis Obispo, Department of Planning and Building staff for final evaluation, input, and direction with the specific revisions noted.
Okay, thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Director Dean seconds. It's been moved and seconded that we submit the the draft project description for the water reclamation facility coastal development permit application. We direct staff to file the draft project description with the County of San Luis Obispo, Department of Planning and Building staff for final evaluation, input, and direction with changes stated. Roll call, please.
Director Thomas?
Aye.
Director Dean?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Abstain.
Vice President Scott?
Aye.
President Gray?
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for all your attention and patience. I'm going to call a break until, let's say, 3:20. AGP are ready to resume here pretty soon. Okay, I'll just we got 15 seconds. Everybody return to their places here. We're resuming the meeting. Karen. Okay. Okay, all of our members, our directors are back in their seats, and the meeting will now resume with item 7B, which is another hearing to discuss and consider adoption of Resolution 17-2024, approving the CCSD preliminary budget for fiscal year 2024-2025, and Resolution 18-2024, establishing the fiscal year 2024-2025 appropriation limit. I'll turn this over to General Manager McElhinney and staff for a introduction.
Thank you, President Gray. You've already introduced the item 7B. Our fiscal year 2024 preliminary budget would authorize total revenue projections, expenditure authorities, and changes to the general fund, water, WRF, and wastewater fund balances as shown below. And it shows our overall fiscal impact for general fund surplus in that first, we'd call it table, excuse me. Thank you, Ms. Fritz. You'll see a surplus of $220,511. I know some of this discussion has come up in finance, maybe some misunderstanding about being able to carry a surplus in the general fund. There's been talk publicly of how we transferred monies from enterprise fund into general fund. So we can get into that a little deeper, but we assure you there's been no transfer of funds from enterprise to general fund or the other way. Prop 218 does allow for the charging to water and wastewater for support to water and wastewater from the administrative department. And that's what those funds are. Essentially, we have a surplus. We did charge overhead allocation to water and wastewater. We have a surplus in administration, and we're building those general fund reserves to support further support of water and wastewater. And that could include administrative offices that are being purchased or built in the future. Those all go towards supporting water and wastewater. With enough of my talk, I'll turn over to Ms. Fritz and she can dive.
Ms. Fritz.
Thank you, General Manager. So I'm going to move on to the narrative. General Manager McElhinney introduced the item. I would like to point out, I'm not going to read the whole summary. So this budget includes the last year of the rate increase that was approved with the Prop 218 back in 21-22. And so this is the third year of that rate increase. And those rate increases are included for water and wastewater, and WRF rates are staying the same. That resolution does allow us to talk about for next year CPI increases, but those CPI increases are not included in this budget. This preliminary budget includes our operational plan, our revenues and our expenditure plan for the fiscal year of 24-25. It does not include any reserve analysis at this time, and that is included in the final budget, which comes before the board in August. And so the government code allows for the timing of when budgets need to go before, gives us time to close out our end of the year funds, so that reserve projection will come before the board in August, as well as our project carry forwards, our encumbrance carry forwards for all of our capital projects. So this budget is truly just our operational plan for 24-25. One thing I'd like to point out is that the facilities and resources budget has absorbed the property tax allocation for the pros department, which is now, it's not a department, it's not a commission, it moved to a committee. So that FNR property tax allocation was moved over into facilities and resources specifically, because that money was always used to help fund that operation. And any sort of operating costs that were in the pros department have been moved to facilities and resources within this budget. So that money didn't just disappear or go into admin, it went specifically into facilities and resources. So if you turn to page 350, the budget page, agenda page 353, I'll move over to the combined preliminary budget, which kind of details out a little more specifically the numbers that were in the tables in our agenda and our staff report, which you can see for general fund, it's the $220,511 net income, and for enterprise funds, $58,259, which resides in the wastewater department, which we'll see later on in the schedules. The surplus, and like General Manager McElhenney alluded to, the surplus in the general fund is in there for emergencies that may come up during the year, as well as to fund deferred maintenance and repair for the different facilities that we have in the general fund, such as the Vets Hall, such as ranch, the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve maintenance an operation, if anything comes up there. The administrative offices, like I said, we have a need for maybe some relocation for our offices. The facilities and resources building is something that we need to address. And the fire department has, different maintenance and repairs that we need to be proactive in funding for. So it is written in the policy that it is up to, and I've checked with our auditors, there is no GASB rule that says that the general fund can't hold on to those revenues. So we are not taking money from anywhere. What we're doing is we're holding on to the revenue. There's past precedent. We've done this for most years. It is up to the general manager and the staff and myself to decide if we want to do, and then coming before the board to approve if we want to include, those cost saving, if we want to reduce the overhead allocation by that revenue amount or keep that to help fund these deferred maintenance. So it's not something to be addressed in a policy discussion if we want to, really clearly state, that we should reduce the overhead allocation by the revenue amounts and pass that savings on to all of the departments. It's not just water and wastewater. It's also facilities and resources gets an allocation of overhead, and so does fire. So it would affect all departments. And I completely understand the discussion. I think it's a valid one. We do have a subcommittee that is looking at overhead allocation, and I think that's a perfect place to, because we will be augmenting the budget policy that was just reviewed, updated and approved this year. We'll be looking at it again and really focusing on the overhead allocation, and I think that's a great discussion. And if we want to set a policy, I just feel like we need to really understand the scope of what that means. That means that we don't have a way to fund deferred maintenance in general fund if we're going to transfer all those, transfer that cost savings on to all of the departments through reducing the overhead allocation. Or we could, we would have to reduce expenditures and each department, fire and facilities and resources, would have to create their own way to earn money to fund their deferred maintenance. So I think it's just really important for everyone to have a discussion about what it means really for our facilities. So I just want to say it wasn't something, we're not going against government code, and we're fine in that way. And it's a policy decision that we need to continue having discussions about. Moving on to the property tax allocation for under general fund, they're showing how we allocate the property tax allocation. And you can see 72% goes to fire, 25% goes to facilities and resources. And this I apologize, PROS is still on this one. So it's actually 27% facilities and resources. That 2% belongs over there. And 1% goes to wastewater, which on page 355, you can see wastewater gets an allocation to kind of cover the low income discounts that they give to customers. And so the property tax are the sole source of discretionary revenues appropriate to cover the cost of the discounts. So they get a $25,000 allocation for the property taxes. So I'm just kind of highlighting different things. I'm not going to go over everything, everything that the significant items and everything. On page 357, you can see the administrative cost allocation. And so this shows the percentage and how much the departments receive. So water receives 48%. The water department is paying for the WRF's portion. So that's combining that. And then wastewater pays for 26%, fire 20%, and facilities and resources is 6%. So the administrative fund budget assumes, so our budget assumes that the administrative costs are 100% reimbursed by the other operating budgets. We've really, I worked really closely. One other thing I wanted to point out is there was one change from when this went to Finance Committee. And so I wanted to just point that out. And Finance Committee did see this and they approved it, but there was one change that I wanted to bring forth, so that would be approved if the board wants to approve it, or I can take it out. And so it kind of came to me at the last minute, and this did not go before R&I either, is we have the potential to purchase an EV truck. And so the utility manager kind of came forth and asked if it would be possible if we included that in the budget, because he's very passionate about, I know he's on vacation, so he can't really speak. I don't know all of the details, but there is, this directive that we're supposed to be moving towards EV vehicles, and he's been working on trying to make that happen and get charging stations and all of that. And so he saw this as a good opportunity for us to purchase our first EV truck. So we added that to the, and it did not go before R&I, but it was added to the capital expenditures. So you will see that there. And I just wanted to really be specific and point this out. I'm seeing this as really like a balanced budget. And so I worked really closely with the general manager and all of the other department managers and put our heads together and figure out the best way that we can get a balanced budget and still operate the district at the high level of standard that we have become accustomed to. So with that, I think I'll just entertain any questions.
Thank you. Yeah, could you just tell me, where on the, speaking of the EV truck, where does that show in the, is it on the CIP list?
Yes, so let me, and I did want to go over some of these so I can't keep talking. I feel like I'm talking a lot, but
Well, just go to questions. Don't go to questions, but
you are going to find that.
Well, while she's looking, can I say something?
please.
We did discuss purchasing EV vehicles at R&I just through a different entity. But R&I did agree it was a good idea to move forward with purchasing an EV truck.
Sorry, I'm still looking. It's a big document.
Is it wastewater or water? We can.
Page 417, line 69.
Replace the F-250? I'm thinking 3S. It wouldn't be. It should say B, right? Yeah. So I want to make sure we're not. It's in the totals, and it got in there, so we're not.
Okay, I'm going to go and find it.
Okay, why don't we go? Yeah, why don't we go to questions from the board? Unless you want to, I mean, if you can't handle. I mean, while you're looking for it, maybe you should be trying to answer questions. I guess maybe you should wait a little bit.
You can ask me another question. I can multitask.
You can. Questions from directors. Director Farmer.
Thank you, President Gray. Yes.
Board too.
Under the budget report on page 390, WRF operations, and right there at the top line where it says $1,321,000. What is that referencing? I know that we have and then I'll have another question on from page 392. So first, does this indicate that what we're accounting for that's going to be spent on the facility, operations of the facility, is $1.33 million? Is that what we're talking about here?
Okay, so I'll take this opportunity to talk about how these schedules are situated. So that number, that 1.3 million, is actually revenue. So that's how much revenue that the WRF takes in, and that's from the fees collected on the water bills. So the revenue total is 1.329 million. There's a little bit of interest income along with the revenue. And then if you look, there's, all the detail then of the expenses. And then, so the total expense is 1.139 million. So that is leaving us with a surplus of 190,000 in the WRF operations fund. So the number you're looking at is the revenue.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. So if I could ask one more question on this. This would be on page 392 under expense, where it says services and supplies, $266,000 and change, so to speak. So perhaps Mr. Reaper, or if Mr. Green is still on the line, he can explain what that amount would be for.
Okay, so I'm going to direct you to page 390, so a few pages before. So what you're looking at there, Director Farmer, is the summary. And so if you look to page 390,
right
and
down
if
here
you
near
go
down
down
here.
the left-hand side to
Right.
category 52, services and supplies,
All right.
that all those numbers are going to equal that 266,000. So, there's maintenance and repair for the water pumps, maintenance and repair for buildings, maintenance and repair for grounds, vehicles, computer services, government fees and licenses, utilities. So that's the detail you're looking for. I mean, it might not be.
No, I think it's obviously very very concisely done, and I appreciate you directing me to where I probably should have noticed earlier.
They're a little confusing.
No, I think, no, it's very well explained. It's just that it's what it represents to me that is a little bit frustrating, like over $250,000 for something that isn't working, but that's just me. Thank you.
So I am going to point out page 399. If you can move to there and kind of more towards the bottom of the page, it's category 60 for capital outlay. And its account number is 12-61700-12. And you'll see the EV truck is in there for 55,000. And so that's where the EV truck is. I'll have to go back and make sure that it's included on the actual CIP list, but it is in the budget.
This is in the wastewater budget.
Correct. If you,
55,000?
page 399.
Okay, thank you. I see it there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right there.
Yeah, there it is. Any questions, Dr. Farmer? No. Dr. Thomas?
Yeah, thank you, President Gray, and yeah, thank you, Ms. Fritz, for the great explanation, and a few questions, and one just to set the stage. In the past, we found the budget narrative along with the preliminary budget. The last 2 years, we've identified perhaps changes that ought to be made, but then with the final budget, then we don't see a narrative, but I'd like to have the opportunity to bring this preliminary budget narrative back to the board, and I've got a few material suggestions. But first, each of the departments has a set of goals, objectives, and plans. And as we all recall, we spent some time in January, February, March defining the district and each department's goals and strategies. And these don't match in any way. They're totally unrelated to the strategic plan. And it makes one scratch one's head and say, wait a minute, and look for that list of goals and objectives and say, if that's our goals and objectives, then why are these here? Because this is where we're spending the money. However, you read these, and these are all good things to keep in mind, and perhaps, I don't know, maybe these are a set of planning assumptions or budgeting assumptions. I mean, let's talk about that. It's in several other specifics, but I'd like to discuss this one, because it applies to each of the departments. And in my opinion, we shouldn't have this list of items listed in each department as goals, objectives, and plans if, in fact, they are totally unrelated to our goals and objectives.
Maybe continue with questions, and then when we get into discussion, we can come back to that larger topic. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, Dr. Scott, Vice President Scott.
Is it okay?
Oh, sure.
Are you done?
I've got another half dozen, but I would rather have some engagement rather than
we're not
read everything. And
we haven't had public comment yet. We're not in the discussion phase yet. Vice President Scott.
Yes. So thank you, Mr. President. I have a question about a sentence on page 354 under significant budget items. The last sentence just before the pie chart, it says revenue collected in the general fund is not being used to offset administrative costs to help ensure the general fund is balanced and be able to perform future deferred maintenance on assets within the general fund. This is what you were addressing. Okay. I didn't understand what you just said from that sentence.
Okay.
So.
Dr. Dean.
Okay, so on page 419, line 52, replacement 2005 F-150 truck with F-250, $55,000 budgeted. Is that the EV truck? It's in the wastewater CIP.
No.
That's not the same truck?
No.
Oh, where? On
419. Well, we identified it in the budget.
It's in the budget. I don't think it made it onto the CIP list. Like I
so
said,
this
it was
is-
a
It needs to be added to
last-minute
the CIP.
addition.
Okay, so this is a different truck that's being replaced.
No, so why don't, do we want, let's, so I should probably go over some of these schedules. So is this okay if I do go over the CIP?
Yeah, you
list
should,
now?
yeah.
Okay. So I was going to kind of go over some of these other things that are not in the budget schedule, such as the PAL list and our salary schedule and everything, but we'll start with the capital improvement list.
Yes.
So on page, the agenda packet, page 411, we had talked a lot about including like a legend and all of that. And so this is my first attempt at that, and I do see this as a continued, work in progress. So I kind of, you can see under ranking, I showed what the B and the 1 and the 2, 3 stand for. So that's under the rankings, and then also tried to highlight and just give a little bigger explanation about what each of the columns is. Then I also included on page 412 a preliminary kind of timeline of how we are starting the process of getting the CIP projects approved for the year. So as you know, this is the first time we're using this new list that was approved this past year. And so this is a current working list of our activity. So anything that is in bold, and well, okay, let me start over. Anything that says B are things that are budgeted. So those are things that were budgeted that are currently in the budget for 23-24. Anything that is a 1 is something that we're requesting for 24-25. Okay. As you can see, so it got a little bit confusing. There's an additional budget request column on D, that's D. And if you look at the first, so page 413, you have a bolded number that is under column or row 11. So the Vets Hall sound system, that's already budgeted for $20,000. There's an additional budget request for the 24-25 budget for $30,000 more to complete that project, to update the Vets Hall sound system. Like I said, I'm trying to get this version to work for this approval, so I'm welcome to feedback on that, but that's how I have kind of indicated this is an additional budget request. Everything else, if you go to row 26, there is a ranking of a 1. That means, and it's bolded, we're requesting $15,000 for ballistic vests for active shooter response for the fire department. That is the only item that we're moving forward for the fire department. And I can talk later, there was definitely unfunded CIP requests for fire and facilities and resources. So if you go to page 415, you'll see all of the ECM projects there have a B in their ranking because they're all budgeted and those are projects that we're working on. Wastewater, aside from the truck, which did not make it onto this list, which I will add, they have one other budget request, number line 68. They're splitting the cost for a fuel tank and computer replacement for our fuel, our gas and our diesel with water. So you can see a ranking of 1 on there. So on page 418, and I'm going over this in a little more detail because this is our first go around with this. You can see all of the advanced metering infrastructure. The meter install has a B in the ranking because that's already been budgeted. Row 6, registers, has a B. That's what's been budgeted. We will have meter lids. You can see the ranking is a 2 because that's a project that will come before the board at a later date. So if you look on page 419 for water, starting at line 34, that in the budget, you will see there's a request for Stewart Street Station roof, Wellfield Gate, Lemert fence, the San Simeon Well 2 pole submersible. All those that are 1 and highlighted are the budget the CIP requests They went through R&I for water, and you will see them, they're all in the budget schedules too. So they are reflected. And they're able to pay for all of their requests with their operating budget for the year. There's no ask to go into reserves for those.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how these CIP lists are reading. So I will have to add that EV vehicle to the wastewater.
Okay, thank you. This is in question. Was this in response to Director Thomas's question? Because he has the light on.
No, that was Director Dean's
question, right? Director Dean's
about
question,
the EV.
yes.
And then
Okay.
I had wanted to explain this a little bit because it's new.
Right, I understand that. So then in other words, when we approve this budget today, we add with the proviso that that EV truck be added to the CIP list as part of our approval of the preliminary budget?
Well, I mean, it's kind of semantics because it is in the budget.
It's in the budget.
It's in the
Yeah,
budget,
okay.
the CIP list.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, we could
Yeah,
put
okay,
that
thank you.
provision.
Any more questions? Director Thomas, you have more questions?
Questions and comments. While we're on the CIP list, let's go back to page 413. And one of my concerns is that the column C, which is labeled project estimate, is a column that's answering multiple questions. And that is never a good thing for spreadsheets from my perspective. And for example, the Vets Hall sound system, in that column there's 20,000, and then the next column there's 30,000. My question is, all right, so what's that going to cost? Like, what is a simple cost estimate of the Vets Hall sound system?
$50,000.
$50,000.
So once it's approved, I was trying to put a column in there to be able to clearly identify to everyone that this is, and I've never really had a project that we were asking for more money. Basically, the project has already been approved, so I was trying to find a way to communicate that this is additional to what was already one. If you all approve that additional expense today, I would move that 30,000 over to the project estimate column, and then it would be complete that the project estimate is 50,000. It's separated out into that other column just to be able to clearly communicate, or I guess it's not so clear, but to communicate that it's an additional ask on top of what has already been approved.
So I'll ask we do one of two things. We, since the column labeled project estimate is not in fact a project estimate, but it's a long explanation, and it's what is approved, I guess, in the current year budget. And there's, with the proviso that there's a column next to it for additional requests. Either change that column and say what it really is, column C, and perhaps, I think everyone will want to know what is the cost of whatever line item it is. And there will be years when we're unable to budget the entire amount of a project. And that's okay. That's the nature of budgeting in organizations. But the concept of a cost estimate, what the life cycle cost is going to be, is an essential number about any capital project. It's, to me, the most fundamental number, and there's not a column for that. Okay. So I'm going to make a pitch that we, add that. And there are several other items I have, but it's good to discuss.
I'll let Ms. Fritz respond, then ask for any other questions for clarification, then I'll go to public comment and we can come back to this. Ms. Fritz?
Oh, I needed a little clarification what he wanted the column to be.
Good old-fashioned engineering cost estimate.
I believe that's what's there.
There's a number of 20,000 in that column. Right. That's how much it's budgeted.
We're sliding into discussion here. Any other questions?
And let me ask, is discussion unacceptable?
Well, during question, before we go to public comment, yes.
Okay.
It is.
Well, let's have public comment, and then
we'll come back to discussion.
All my comments will be discussed.
Right, exactly. Rick Farmer has a question.
Yeah, I just am looking at the list here under the same page 413, facilities and resources pros projects, I can understand all of these are here except for admin office I can understand F&R building relocation. I mean, it was flooded out, but admin office relocation, I don't see how that, and I can understand wanting to do that at some point, but does it belong under F&R and pros projects?
It is a facilities and resources category, isn't it?
I could see that going up to the admin. So that's probably
Admin?
just I should put it up into column 5 so I can change that and do that. It's not, we're not requesting that money this year, but
Right.
I can go ahead and move that in the presentation.
You can understand my point, right?
Yeah, and some of the, Director Farmer, some of that could have been is we've been in lots of discussions about the need to move admin, the need to move facilities and resources.
I know that, right.
Build one happy house with both of us there. So that may have been some of the bleed over that how it got under facilities and resources.
I like that, a happy house.
I'm going to have to take 2 actions here. One is asking for an extension of the meeting. I would hopefully get everything done today by 5 o'clock. Is that okay with everybody? Unanimous consent? We extend the deadline to 5 and not go past 5. And I want to ask for public comment at this point. Is there any public comment from people in the audience? Ms. Dodson, anybody online?
Yes, David Pearson.
Mr. Pearson.
Yeah, good day, Chairman Gray and board members. As I pointed out in the Finance Committee meeting, the surplus in the admin department is a misuse of funds. It is taking $106,703 from the water department and $56,838 from the wastewater department and adding it to the revenue of the general fund. This maneuver may be legal, but it's inappropriate. It is using ratepayer monies for general fund activities. When new rates are calculated, the expenses of the enterprise funds should only be the monies needed to run the operation of the enterprise and its fair share of the admin department. This kind of budgeting will cause rates to be higher than they need to be for water and wastewater. Now in the general fund, the monies can be used for projects or at the end of the year, put in the general fund reserves, which is a transfer of funds from an enterprise fund to a general fund. I would also like to point out that this budget does not address the deferred maintenance that continues to build in the fire and F&R budgets. These costs, which must be met at some time, are now in excess of $2,850,000 for priority 2 projects and another $3,840,000 for priority 3 projects. It is time to look for additional revenue sources for the general fund, as the Finance Committee reported several months ago. Ignoring these costs will not make them go away, and trying to transfer funds from the enterprise funds to the general fund to cover them is inappropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Any other comments online?
No.
Thank you. So we'll come back to the board now for discussion. I wish, does Dr. Thomas want to start?
Thank you, President Gray. So let's go back to the my concern that calling these lists under each department goals, objectives, and plans with a list of things that are not the same as our goals and objectives. What are we going to do about that? Someone with a jaded eye would look at this and say, well, I guess the exercise in strategic planning is just for show, and this is what they're really going to do. But then again, these appear to me, I might call them planning assumptions. You might just relabel them because, of course, you're going to continue to support training and maintaining professional licensing, et cetera. It's like, of course, we're going to do these things. So, but we can't call them goals and objectives because we have a set of goals and objectives and they don't match.
I might suggest maybe an easy wording change. If you have our budgeting assumptions, might be the best way of putting that. basically budgeting assumptions might be the best way of describing them. I do think we have to avoid an apples and oranges kind of comparison here too, and introducing the idea of strategic goals, especially into an annual operational budget, creates all kinds of confusion. This is kind of the basic blocking and tackling that this organization does to carry out its mission, carry out any strategic goals it may have, but also carry out all of its basic activities like providing water and sewer service and fire service. It's a 1-year blueprint to make sure we spend no more than we take in doing all these essential tasks. So I think actually this suggestion, Director Thomas's suggestion that the wording be more accurate as to what we're doing, basically the sort of essential, but the budget assumptions for the coming year or something like that might be a better way of putting it. I'll throw that at anybody else for comment.
Thank you, President Gray and Director Thomas. I think that would be a good approach. When I initially had conversations with Director Thomas about this via email, trying to wrap my head around this, much like you, I was looking at the way that these goals are presented as a snapshot of what our 1-year objectives would be or assumptions would be for budgetary purposes. It's a short snapshot moving forward of a year where I look at the strategic goals as strategy from a 10,000-foot view that isn't as drilled down as what we're talking about here. So I think at least the easiest thing from a staff perspective would just be to change the wording so it is not confused with our strategic goals, if that pleases the board.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board on that?
Could I speak to that?
Vice President Scott, yes.
Yeah, thank you. And I truly do believe what you're saying, Director Thomas, because that's why we do a strategic plan. But when I look back, for instance, this on page 355, it's fire and emergency services. If you look at our core area, fire protection and emergency services, these 5 things that are listed here do fall under this strategic goal to provide optimal fire protection, rescue, and emergency medical services on a 24/7 basis. So I think it somehow to, like everybody's saying, is to rename these, relabel them, 1 through 5. But depending on what we think is important, it would be very easy to put these 3 main objectives as just insert it right above what it says. What did you say? Assumptions?
I said budgeting assumptions.
Yeah. I mean, it fits very nicely.
Yeah.
It's just not listed.
Yeah, that would be another thing to add, perhaps.
Yeah.
But this set, of course, is a different set, and I'm curious if Mr. Wilson is on the line, Haley. I'll channel his comments for a moment, but I see things the same way. I've heard him say it many times. We develop a strategic plan, and we want to see how that rolls into the budgeting, and one should drive the other. It would be worthwhile to show in each department what we're going to do in this coming year towards the achievement of that, the goals and objectives in the plan, but that would be a lot more work. I would think maybe that's a section to add next year. But that's a lot to scramble in a few months.
Yeah.
But that's where I'd like to see this go. But for now, if we can just relabel that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next
one.
Yeah. Next one. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, page 8, 355, right, middle of the page, fire and emergency services, capital expenditures totaled 15,000. On the schedule, page 19, aka 366, we have capital expenditures of 143,622. So which one is it?
So so if you look under capital outlay, category 60, there's 4 accounts 6220A, 6220B, 6220P, 6220R that were in our system when we implemented Tyler. They were put under capital outlay when they should be under supplies and services. So I was able to connect with Tyler and I changed the category. So when this comes before the board in the final budget, it will be up there and the numbers I double checked and the numbers all calculate. So in our next presentation of this, it will be correctly up into supplies and services, and the capital outlay budget will be 15,000.
So you killed that one. So that 143, so those 4 items go up too.
Yeah, and that also corrects the discrepancy between on page 353, the general fund budget supplies and services number and the supplies and services number from the charts.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and
all
I
matched
checked
that,
the number and it was correct. So yes,
that's what was missing. Yeah.
for pointing that out, I was able to relatively easily fix it within the software, so it is correct.
Great catch. And there are, by the way, there are several issues in here that I had communicated to the general manager. He's communicated to Ms. Fritz, and they've sent an update. It's not reflected here, but those have all been adequately addressed. You don't want me to bring those up here, I assume.
Unless they've been.
Unless everybody wants to hear it, but yeah, there were some capitalization issues and some minor grammatical things that we've made adjustments to. And since Director Thomas, you did mention the fact you'd like to see before this narrative with the final budget, I think you'll be able to see those changes reflected then.
Fantastic. Then the last thing then here is, we've heard this a lot of times from a lot of folks. I've brought up the request myself, a simple summary of the loans in each department, the loan amount, the original loan amounts, loan terms, outstanding balance, along with the reserves in each of those departments. A simple asset sheet that any of us can understand. Where do we see that?
So I was going to include that on the quarterly report. It's not in this budget presentation. So I believe that Director Scott had asked for that in the quarterly report. So that is where my focus has been, is to develop something which will be presented to the board again in August, along with the final budget, but I did not add it to the budget report.
Yeah, as I look through the narrative, I mean, this is the foundational document for our budget, and I would love to see it here if it makes sense. It's sort of like reading this really gives me a sense of the financial health of the district. And if someone were to ask me, hey, Michael, what's, rather than 100 pages, what's the short version, like right here? So is it appropriate to put it in here, the debt narrative?
My view is that it's a good year-end thing to summarize. In fact, what Ms. Fritz is saying about having in the fourth quarter report, that's the good timing, because it's the end of the fiscal year and you can take stock of all the loans. I think if it's going to be done in the fourth quarter report anyway, it could be added as a page or whatever it is to the final budget at the same time.
Yeah, once I create it, it will be simple to add it to wherever. It is not a fluctuating document. The payments are, once a year or maybe twice a year. So I don't think it's something that needs to be updated every month. It's not changing that much. So once I create it for the fourth quarter report, and I can add it just for information only, as far as so people can see it every quarter, and it is not a problem for me to add it to the budget, or I could add it to the final budget.
And what I'm thinking is, and probably anyone who reads something like the budget narrative, I can sit down and I'm reading words in English, and there's numbers, but this makes sense. You get to the tables, and it's like a person needs another cup of coffee. Almost like turn your head sideways, and you're going into the world of finance. It's a whole new. And I've seen our quarterly and our budget reports, and the way things are worded in the budget narrative is easy for anyone to understand. The way things are in the tables is less so. If we could have that simple version in the narrative that anyone here would understand about the debts and such, that would be very useful.
Any other discussion points? I'm sure nobody gets left out here too.
I just have one more question.
Vice President Scott.
Thank you. So the title at the beginning of each page on the tables, it says for fiscal 2024-2025, period ending 7/31/2024.
That's just a software thing. So when I'm to get these, I actually have to create the new year in the software, and I'm putting everything in as July 1st. So when I'm running my report, I'm just using July 31st as my date. There's no activity yet.
Okay.
So it's for fiscal year 24-25. I have to choose a day and time to run the report.
Oh, okay.
So that's why it's 7/31/24.
Good question.
President Gray, may I? Just quick point of clarification. I know we talked about the end of the fiscal year budget having the debt service and totals, but Director Thomas ended with wanting to see in the budget narrative. I just want to make sure that when we arrive next June with this document, it's okay for it not to be in this one, but in the final? Or you're saying you want that in the preliminary?
Well, the reason I would see is that you're if you want to get your sort of a good point in the year, a good stopping point for sort of taking stock of all your assets and liabilities, year end makes much more sense than like sometime in the fourth quarters, which we have now. We don't really have quarter end, year end numbers, and you're getting into weird comparisons perhaps if you are comparing a year end figure with some other figure from another part of the fiscal year earlier. So you got to get apples and apples, basically. Year end is the best, I think, for that.
Not apples and apples, no. I mean, yes, it's apples and apples. It's not apples and oranges, but that was the analogy you were.
We want apples and apples, not apples and oranges.
And it would be. Here you have the combined preliminary budget. It's not the end of June yet, but yet here it is. This is our projection. This is what the budget will be, and we can have a projection for. We know what our outstanding debt is at any point, and simply, it's sort of like a statement of financial health.
Yeah. But and I think we have to decide, sort of split the task up here a little bit. Today we're talking about this budget, and we have to decide what we want to see changed specifically in this budget and specifically in this narrative, and what we want to see done in the next narrative, which is for the final budget, and then next year. So first, I think we have to get the first item of business is, to me, going over this budget and any changes that need to be made for corrections, and that includes, say, the items that were in should have been in capital. We're actually had to be shifted from capital outlay to services and supplies in the fire department. A couple other things. Those changes need to be made, but the things about what we're going to do in the final budget, I think we just instruct staff to do. Yeah, Ms. Fritz.
So can I just make a suggestion?
Yeah.
So I see this preliminary budget as truly focusing on the operating budget for the year.
Yeah.
So this is, for better or for worse, the pluses and the minuses for our actual operations for the year. So the final budget, I've already clarified that the final budget includes the reserve projection because I have closed the fiscal year by then. So that I feel like is a more appropriate place because I've made all the debt service payments. I have the final, like where we are with all of our debts and including it in there, which it can also be included in the fourth quarter report. And maybe sticking with that point in time, and I can include it as information only in every other quarterly report, but to update it as the year goes. I don't know how healthy that is. So, or just how like cost benefit ratio of taking the time to update it when we make a payment once every 6 months. But I see this budget, and it's kind of clearly written in the policy that this is, we're really looking at the brass tacks, right? Like the ins and outs. What are we going to be spending this year in operations? So it is purposely more detailed. And so when I come back in August, we're going to have more. We have the reserve picture. It's more about the financial health of the district. And I can definitely include that, the debt schedules and all of that in an easy to follow format. So that would be my suggestion, is to include it in the final budget with the reserve projections.
Makes good
makes sense to me.
And also, you hit on a key point. Some of those payments are annual, some of them are semi-annual.
Right.
So doing it monthly might be misleading. So once a year, but you'll do it on the next round. Yeah, of course.
I can bring that forward in August. I will also include it on the fourth quarter report and in the quarterly report, so you all can just be refreshed and reminded that, like, okay, this is where we are with these.
And I want to make sure the directors have a chance to join in here. Director Dean.
This is getting into minutia, but there's 2 spelling mistakes in the CIP list that have been there for years. It's not Ms. Fritz's mistakes. And I've pointed it out several times in the past. And so I'll send those to Ms. Fritz if she doesn't mind. If we're going to tweak with some of the stuff in there, we might as well correct the spelling of San Simeon and consult.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Dr. Farmer, you have anything? Okay. I'll entertain a motion, actually, on this document.
I have a motion.
Okay, Director Vice President Scott.
Yes. I move that we adopt Resolution 17-2024, approving the CCSD preliminary budget for fiscal year 2024-25, and Resolution 18-2024, establishing the fiscal year 2024-2025 appropriations limit.
Do you have a second?
May I add a friendly amendment?
Yeah, a second. If you're, you can second with an amendment too, I think.
With minor corrections as have been discussed.
Yes, thank you. And it's okay with them?
That's fine.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that I'll give the full, I'll give the full text here. Let's see, it's, we adopt.
I read it.
She did.
She did good for,
yeah.
We adopt the preliminary budget for fiscal year 2024-2025, and Resolution 18-2024, establishing the fiscal year 2024-2025 appropriations limit. And just refresh me, is our council there? Can these be done under one vote?
It can. Legally, you can. It's always better to kind of separate them, but it's fine as is.
Okay, because I think we're pretty much ready to get both of them done. Can I have a roll call, please?
Vice President Scott.
Aye.
Director Thomas.
Aye.
Director Dean.
Aye.
Director Farmer.
Aye.
President Gray.
Aye. Moving on to another hearing. This is to discuss and consider adoption of Resolution 19-2024, confirming the itemized report to collect delinquent solid waste collection and disposal charges on the county tax rolls. Mr. McElhaney, could you introduce this?
Thank you, President Gray. Agenda item 7C, as introduced, and the hearing has been open. Public hearing to discuss and consider adoption of Resolution 19-2024, confirming the itemized report to collect delinquent solid waste collection and disposal charges on the county tax rolls. This is something that we do every year, and the property owner of record is responsible for paying the delinquent charges, and then this is a mechanism in which we collect those on the tax rolls if they are not paid. And with that, I'll turn it over to the board.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board on this item for the staff? I'll open it to public comment. Is there any public comment on this item?
Yes, SB.
SB, please, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for your time. I was unaware of this, so I just found out about it. And I just wanted to state that my opinion that the trash bill should be mandated is driving my decision to disagree with collecting things on the tax roll. And the reason why I say that is a tax roll, as far as I understand it, I couldn't find any detail on what you actually do, that a tax certificate could be issued for an investor to purchase the tax lien, and therefore they could have some cloud on the title with the person who owns the home. And I think that I would like to state that our median income in Cambria is $39,946. After taxes, it's about $30,000. It's just above the poverty level in California for a family of 3. And something like I understand the water because you have to keep the pipes going and flow everything, and we don't have alternate water sources. But for trash, people could maybe share one or not make as much trash and share one. And I just disagree with it being mandated. And then also, I was wondering if you could consider maybe giving people, 2 months a year for any mandated utility, that they could just take it offline for 2 months, and then they could have like a sort of a breather, because income can be variable. I've personally witnessed a lot of people in this area that are in a distressed situation, even seniors with their own homes that they own outright. It's just with inflation, things have gotten kind of out of hand for people. And I just wanted to say that I don't agree with putting things on the tax roll if indeed a tax lien certificate is issued for it. If it's just merely it goes on title and when they sell the house, then you would get your money, that's a whole different thing. I just see it as sort of like a constitutional taking argument, a potential liability for the district, and also a distress situation potentially for the community. And I'd love to have a little bit more discussion on this if you didn't mind in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comment?
No.
Okay. Any comment from anyone in the hall? Close the public hearing and return to the board for discussion.
I have a question.
Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So if you own property here, then you're responsible for setting up the garbage payment. Okay?
Yeah.
So if your property is being rented, does that person ever have to set up the garbage or not?
I think it's, people are shrugging. I think it's the owner, I think, is responsible for trash collection, but I don't know. I would assume it. Ms. Fritz.
I just know personally I've rented before and I've had to have my own trash. My
Had your own trash.
Yeah.
Right.
It depends on the agreement.
The lease.
Yeah, because it's the same thing as if you're renting and whether you pay the water bill or the landlord pays the water bill, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah. So renters can definitely be, but when we put it on the tax roll, it's going to the property owner.
Yeah,
Right.
that makes sense. Yeah. And this is something, it's mandated. Mr. Howell, you have something to say? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there we are. Yeah.
Yes. So in the case of renting in case of a rental, if the tenant does not pay the water bill, the district has the owner on account and can collect the water bill from the owner. So this is similar in that. So the owner is responsible if the tenant does not comply. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Director Dean.
And is it the case that if it's put on the tax rolls, it's a lien that once the property is sold, the lien is satisfied if they don't pay it? Is that the case?
Director Dean, I would have to defer to Mr. Carmel on how those liens.
How do property tax liens work? Director Counsel.
That usually is the case. You'll get a title report. It'll show up with a delinquent tax account and it'll be paid through escrow.
I thought.
Director Dean.
I just lost my train of thought.
It's getting late.
I also want to point out the fact that, yes, we have a lot of low-income people here, and that's why we worked with the ad hoc committee to get a discount for those people who qualify for the PG&E rate reduction.
Yeah. We've been cognizant of that problem. Exactly. Any other?
I just need to do a follow-up.
Vice President Scott, yes.
So the names of the people that are here, are those the property owners or are those the people who are delinquent?
I get this list from our mission country. So because we actually are not in charge of, as you all know, we're not the trash company. So I would have to ask them whose name it is. I can't, I don't know that for certain.
It would be the property owner's name.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, Director Thomas.
Thank you, President Gray. And I just wanted to ask, and this is out of bounds, Haley, let me know, but the speaker whose ID showed SB was very articulate. Just, curious who that was and if that's fair game to ask.
Hello. Hi.
Yeah,
This is
she's here,
Sherry.
yeah.
Hi. Hi, guys. Yes, I'm Sherry Bricich, and I'm actually a homeowner in Cambria.
Yeah.
And I was a active realtor for 18 years, and I went through the 2008 collapse, and I've seen firsthand. I know everything about liens, and the way that this works, I think, and I couldn't see any documentation on it, is if you issue a tax roll. For example, there's a lot of people who inherited their homes here who own them outright. Let's just say they can't afford, they're on Social Security. They make the average Social Security payment is about $17,500 per the Social Security Administration. So let's just say they have to choose between paying the mandated trash bill or fixing a tooth. They're going to pick the tooth. And then here's what happens. They own their home outright. You issue a tax roll. Some people it won't impact because they have a big first mortgage and nobody can do anything. But some people are close to with a very small mortgage or they own it outright. And this tax lien can become a tax lien certificate that an investor can buy. Then what they do is they go in and they say, hey, I'm going to pay this for you, but you're going to pay me all this interest, and then they have the foot in the door to take their home either through a hard money loan or something really bad. And I've seen it over and over again. And that's the only thing I caution you on. It does open some liability for the district. It's bad for the community. And I would suggest that you get a collector judgment lien instead, which would just simply go on title and be paid through escrow. This other thing, if the tax lien certificate could be issued, it's a bad idea. And I do have a lot of experience. So if anybody wants to call me, just go ahead. I'll give you my number.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's continue. Any discussion or motion?
You want me to make a motion?
Well, if you wish. Director Dean?
I make a motion that we confirm the item, that we adopt resolution number 19-2024, confirming the itemized report and authorizing delinquent solid waste collection and disposal service charges to be collected on the tax roll.
Second?
I'll rush out here and I'll second it.
Okay, so moving and seconded that we adopt the resolution 19-2024, confirming the itemized report to collect delinquent solid waste collection and disposal charges on the county tax rolls. Could I have a roll call?
Director Dean?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Director Thomas?
Aye.
Vice President Scott?
Aye.
President Gray?
Aye. Moving on to item 7D, it's another public hearing. That public hearing is closed, this one's open. To discuss and consider adoption of Resolution 2024, confirming the 2023 Fire Hazard Fuel Reduction Program itemized cost report of the Cambria Community Services District. Mr. McElhenney, you might want to just briefly introduce it.
Thank you, President Gray. As opened, agenda item 7D, public hearing to discuss and consider adoption of Resolution 2024, confirming the 2023 Fire Hazard Fuel Reduction Program itemized cost report for the Cambria Community Service District. Last year's contracting costs for performance of all the work on the parcels, plus our administrative charges, totaled $92,826. There was 101 parcels invoiced and listed in the itemized cost report to include in the resolution, and these will be assessed on the San Luis Obispo County tax roll for 24-25.
Thank you. Any questions for the staff or on this one? Seeing none, I'll open to public comment. Any public comment on this item?
No.
Any public comment from people in the hall? No. Moving it back to discussion and a motion. Any discussion? If not, I'll hear a motion.
I'll make a motion that we confirm Resolution 2024, confirming the 2023 Fire Hazard Fuel Reduction Program itemized cost report of the Cambria Community Services District.
It's been, do you have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2024 confirming the 2023 Fire Hazard Fuel Reduction Program itemized cost report of the Cambria Community Services District. Could I have a roll call, please?
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Director Thomas?
Aye.
Director Dean?
Aye.
Vice President Scott?
Aye.
President Gray?
Aye. On to 7E, public hearing to discuss and consider adoption of Resolution 2021-2024, approving a fire suppression benefit assessment consumer price index adjustment at the rate of 4.5 for fiscal year 2024-2025. Staff, briefly.
Thank you, President Gray. As mentioned, agenda item 7E. Siri's
Go ahead.
been
Siri's
busy
talking to me.
today, Mr. President.
He's busy, yes.
Agenda item 7E, that is to adopt a resolution to increase the annual fire suppression benefit assessment by approximately $24,436 for a projected total of $567,460 for our fiscal year 24-25. This is just a CPI adjustment to the resolution that was passed in 2003 for a special benefit assessment for fire suppression needs.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Any questions of the staff? Any public comment?
No.
Okay. I think I'll declare the hearing closed. Get back to the board for discussion. Any discussion? Do I hear a motion?
I would move that we adopt Resolution 21-2024, approving the fire suppression benefit assessment consumer price index adjustment rate of 4.5% for fiscal year 2024-2025.
Thank you. It's been moved that we adopt Resolution 21-24, approving a fire suppression benefit assessment district consumer price index increase at the rate of 4.5% for the coming fiscal year. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, but do we have to include and authorizing collection on the tax rolls?
Council?
No. As long as you stated the number of the resolution, you're fine.
Yeah, we've done that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, still have a roll call, please.
Director Thomas?
Aye.
Director Dean?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Vice President Scott?
Aye.
President Gray?
Aye. This concludes the hearings, public hearings. We have 2 items of regular business to attend to. Item 8A is the first of the 2. Discussion and consideration of the 2024-2025 Annual Water Shortage Assessment Report. Would staff just give us a brief walkthrough on it?
Sure. Thank you, President Gray. Agenda item 8A is the discussion and consideration of the annual water shortage assessment report. That report describes key inputs, evaluation criteria, and methodology for addressing the Cambria Community Service District's water system reliability for the coming year. And I do have Mr. Reaper here who's going to present on that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Reaper.
Good afternoon, President Gray, members of the board, staff, and members of the public. Thank you, General Manager, for that introduction. So the assessment, it's almost like a budget for our water supplies. We kind of look at what we got this last winter. We make an estimate based on past usage and past safe yield from our aquifers, and then project that forward. And then as time goes on, we kind of keep track of how well we're meeting our budget, and do we need to increase the water conservation efforts. So that's kind of that in a nutshell. So it takes a number of key inputs. I think the first and probably one of the more important of these is the physical realities of our water supply. That's kind of the basis for this assessment. It's just kind of we have real constraints on that. We also take into consideration the current year unconstrained demand, current year potable water supplies, and then a number of water shortage criteria for evaluating how we're doing. So taking each put in turn, on page 465, it talks about our water supply portfolio. This is kind of the physical limitations and realities of our water supply and our aquifers. Again, I'm not going to go into it, but it's there for everyone to read. And so the next input to consider is the current year unconstrained demand. This is on page 467. So for this assessment, we use an average of the 2019, 2021, 2022, and 2023 reporting years of data to arrive at the projected potable water demands. We excluded 2020 due to COVID. It was kind of a weird year where significantly more visitors, the consumption was a little higher, so it was going to skew the average. So we disincluded it for the purposes of this assessment. And then the table outlining the unconstrained demands, broken down by category, is on page 468. So the next item is the current year potable water supplies, and these are based on the diversions during a below average rainfall year. So when we had to take a look and decide, okay, well, what below average rainfall year are we going to take a look at? Because that's kind of what we're preparing for. Yeah. We're preparing for a below average year because why would we prepare for a normal year when it's always about preparing for the increased need for conservation? So we chose 2017, 2018 for this because it had a very similar rainfall patterns to what we experienced this year. We had a year of above average rainfall and then followed next year by a year of below average rainfall. So we felt that that was a good model for projecting into the future what we expect the potable supply to be at a safe yield. And that supply data for that's on page 471.
Yeah. I could ask, maybe we could ask questions too. Maybe just ask questions if you have any information that we think we need to know. Because you got to the point where we're establishing what would be kind of unconstrained demand based on averages and looking at what a dry year would be. I guess the question I have going in is we do this annually and we did this last year. What's different this year in terms of the expectations or the model? I mean, is it sort of a similar? Is it a rerun or is it slightly?
We are looking at a rerun. Okay. Absolutely, because we had the same considerations at last year in June 2023.
Yeah, helps me a lot.
Absolutely, it made them writing the report. It made writing the report a lot easier. I could copy a lot of what was already there.
Yeah, I'll open up to questions from the board. So it sounds like we're ready for that. Dr. Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Reverend Gray, and kudos for this report. I read through the last year's just side by side and minor differences, but lots of minor differences that have improved the clarity, and it's easier to read. Of course, the more times I do it, the better I get. But it really is more clear. So kudos for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, Dr. Farmer?
I just want to make a comment here. This is under discussion, paragraph 3, the last sentence. The stages aim to reduce customer demands from 0 to 10% to greater than 50%. For those that have been around, we might remember that back in 2014 when things were really tight and the governor asked everybody in the state to cut back, Cambria, if I'm not mistaken, was the third most efficient community or city in the entire state of California with regard to, could we cut back, I believe, 38% from what our usage was at that time. And I think the majority of people in the community have pretty much remained with those habits, let's say, that they developed at that time. So I just want to point that out with regard to, I think most people, they can't really reduce too much more because we've already done that. I don't anticipate us having to do that. I just wanted to point that out. Also, I wanted to ask you on page 468, where we're talking about water demands, and just looking through here from single family and commercial. So once again, as we can see, commercial is about a third of the water usage for the most part compared to single family. Single family is about twice of what commercial is, but that's still, do you have any memory knowledge about, does this indicate that the amount of commercial versus residential use is going up, remaining the same? Do you have any idea?
I don't know whether it's increasing or decreasing. I mean, certainly the commercial using a significant amount of water is potentially an avenue for the next round of conservation measures, but we will look into that.
Yeah.
I did compare that to last year, and they look about the same.
About the same. I seem to recall that I know there's serious concern, I know we're running short on time here, with regard to folks in the commercial area, especially with regard to the motels, that they're somewhat ambivalent with regard to requesting that folks take fewer showers or not have sheets changed every day and so forth, because they don't, well, some way, some people are going to cooperate and some people aren't with regard to the visitors. So I guess that's a problem there for them. So finally, under losses, that last item here on water demands, what is that referring to?
So that is referring, we need to account for the fact that our system is never going to deliver 100% of the water we pump out of the ground to all the customers. There are always going to be leaks. There's always going to be inaccurate meters. But we have to account for that. We cannot assume 100% delivery.
Okay, so with regard to what Ms. Bettenhausen said earlier, with regard to water loss of like 21%, whereas usually it averages, I would think maybe 10 to 11%. That's about what is normal. So what you're pointing out here is about 1/3 of what she determines. Is that correct? Am I wrong?
I'm going to say, doing the math in my head, and it's not going to be super accurate, you get...
It's like about 12%.
7.3 divided by 52 is about 14%.
Oh, well, okay, so then obviously my math
12%.
is wrong then. Okay. So just repeat that one more time so I know what I don't understand.
Is it 64 divided by 516?
It's 52 divided by
52.
7, or sorry, 7.3 divided by 52 is going to give you your percentage.
Just about 14. Anyway, yeah, the whole.
Oh, we
thing.
could do the whole year.
The whole year, yeah, whole year. And it's like more like 12%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'll open up to public comment. Anyone out in the hall or online wish to comment on this topic?
No.
No. Okay. Bring it back to the board for discussion and a motion. Director Farmer. You're allowed, okay. Yeah, motion, fine.
I move that we approve the 2024 Annual Water Shortage Assessment Report for submission to the DWR.
Do we hear a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt or approve the 2024-2025 Annual Water Shortage Assessment Report. May I have a roll call, please?
Director Thomas?
Aye.
Director Dean?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Vice President Scott?
Aye.
President Gray?
Aye. And kudos to the utilities staff and Mr. Reaper for their good work on this vital topic. It doesn't get not getting a lot of attention now, but it would if we ran out of water. So thank you for doing that. One more item. This is an item that came out of Finance Committee. This is the updated investment policy. I can give it to turn it over to Ms. Fritz for just a short summary. This is an update of a policy that was more than 20 years old, so it was well overdue. But Ms. Fritz can explain just the details of it. Or Mr. McElhaney, I don't want to leave you out.
No, I'm happy to turn it over to you and Ms. Fritz, who've been working on it so closely.
Yeah.
Item 8B is a revision of the investment policy. It's been brought before the Finance Committee numerous times. This policy was part of the services that our new investment advisors provided. So they have helped in the creation of this and making sure that it meets all, because there are a lot of government standards that we need to abide by and follow. So all of that is in here. And as I said, we did go before the Finance Committee. It's been talked about, and we did make some adjustments to what was provided. And so I'm open for any questions.
Any questions? Dr. Thomas?
Thank you, President Gray, and no surprise. So first, and yeah, I was blown away. You know, I looked at the September 2002. It's been a while. On page 2, you know, it would be good to under the prudent investor, let's reference the government code 53600.3. The former policy did, and someone would look at prudent investor and scratch their heads and say, where's that definition? So it's just nice to make that referral. It's in there a few pages later, but it would be good here as well. On page, I get about 4 or 5 items, but on page 3, on the ROI, I need an explanation what we mean by attaining a comparative performance measurement. I would know what competitive would be, but I don't know what it means to attain a comparative performance measurement.
It's on
page 3,
item 3, paragraph
return on
3.
investments.
I could take a stab at it. I don't know if Ms. Fritz has I think it's basically having a benchmark of some kind, an index, like S&P 500 or whatever you're using. It wouldn't be for our kind of investment, but an index, say a bond index or something like that to compare it to. That's how I would read it.
Sure. Yeah,
That
like
makes sense. Yeah.
You know, comparing, you know, stocks to the Dow. Is that what we're talking about?
That's what I think. Yeah. That's what I think. I would take it at that.
On page 4, on page of 486, under 7, the authorized dealers. If you read down the numbers, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 4 again. So that second number 4 should probably be number 5.
Okay.
2 lines down, and I'm not sure, this is worth some discussion, where it says may supply, we all financial institutions may supply the general manager with audited financial statements. Do we want to require that? Do you want that to be a shall, or do we want that to be at the discretion of those companies? Because as it is, we're leaving it to their discretion. So do we want that to be may, or do we want it to be shall in this sentence and then in the next one?
Okay.
Oh, and you don't want to talk about it? You want to hear them all?
Well, I think we should
It's more efficient to talk about.
No, because I want to ask some questions, because there's certain things that I noticed too that we might want to just ask about, but I want to get through the questions first, and then there might be some public comment here. So,
okay,
I'm writing these down.
Then on page 6, 488, under number 9, review of investment portfolio. Twice we have the general manager should in those sentences. Should is about morals and ethics. That doesn't belong in a policy. Those should both be shall, in my opinion. Or we could make it optional, but the word should doesn't belong here.
Okay. Duly noted.
Page 6, the number 11, collateralization. It's like, read through this. I mean, I'm a fairly sophisticated investor, and my eyes roll backwards on this. I understand it, but would we ever do this sort of thing? And it seems like I would just delete that section, unless you really think we could ever conceivably use that category of investment vehicle. And then last, on page 12, the second definition, you have asked price. Over on the right, it says basis point. That's the start of another line. So basis point should start a new line.
Okay, Thank you.
That's all I've got.
Okay. Any other questions? Short comments? I'll open this to public comment, then after we'll get back to those points, because I had a couple of comments on those too. Is there any comment from anyone in the hall on this item? Anyone online?
No.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion. I wanted to, address some of those points. I also found actually on page 12, it wasn't just basis point, but bid price also needs a separate entry right after it. So there are two things that need, getting to the simple stuff, the typography, as it were, that's one of them. And then on page 4, under authorized dealers and institutions, yes, the 4 in that sequence should be a 5. That's clear. As a question, and we can discuss about the mays and shalls and shoulds, I would think that should is not just a moral statement or an ethical statement. It's also a recommendation. You should do this in this case and not that. I would give maximum discretion to the, or suitable discretion to the general manager and the finance manager here. If recommended they should do something, I'll leave it to them as to whether they absolutely have to do it in this case, because there's maybe cases where reviewing the portfolio, more than once a year or less than once a year for that issue might be suitable. So other people can disagree with me on that, but I think the Finance Committee thought that was fine the way it was. The issue of, what is it, the collateralization, it is something of an exotic investment for us, people like us, but I thought of that as being something we probably wouldn't, be involved in, but unless this investment policy is being updated constantly, new financial products pop up and become very popular, and there are cases in this, since like 2003, all kinds of things could have happened with all the stuff that brought the economy down in 2008, and so you have to be prepared for anything that has a level of risk that may need some extra protection. Yet, for instance, it might have a good return. It might have a better return than other things we're getting, but if it's something that's not liquid, like a non-negotiable certificates of deposit, or it's in repo agreements that are not highly liquid and we're not in that market, if you need some protection and to be able to get that extra return, this is a way of doing it. Yes, it probably wouldn't be done normally, but it might as well keep the language in there for those cases where it might make sense with the extra collateralization. That's what I'm thinking there. Yeah, I'll open this to other discussion of the board, but I think we can certainly make those changes in the the topographical errors, and ask people's opinions about the other part, the shoulds and the mays. Any comment from the board? Dr. Thomas.
Oh, I would perhaps ask the general manager on page 486. Do we want those to be may or shalls, or perhaps?
I'm indifferent, Director Thomas. I
Ms.
think
Fritz, what do you think?
Yeah, I will, you fight certain battles and you don't fight other ones. Like, I'm fine with either one. Should or shall is acceptable to me either way.
Unless I don't know if our, basically investment advisor would be the one, would be the conduit for those, wouldn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
So maybe this one we leave.
Leave it as it is.
On page 4. I just wanted to bring that up for discussion.
Yeah, I think we leave it for now. I think we can re-examine it because it'll maybe more complicated to have us directly involved in, asking for audited financial statements from the investment firms.
I do see where they're using shall in part of this document.
Mm-hmm.
I could reach out and ask them if in their financial world, if there is like a different definition between why you would use shall sometimes and should other times. Yeah. So we can have that conversation. I don't know if it materially changes the intent of this sentence or the document. But I can definitely ask them.
Okay. It
'Cause
might
I
be good
see
to,
shells used on the first page.
I would suggest if we approve this, we approve it with that instruction to staff to ask that question essentially. And if there's a need for a change, we'll bring it back. But yeah.
I think the one that we should attend to is number 9 on page 488. Do we want to, because to leave it as should, to me, I like to boil things down to logic, and any a person who's skilled in logic would say that means nothing. He should. That's nice. He should. So maybe, and if that's what we want, I would soften it and say may consider reviewing it. Let's be honest.
Well, I guess again, we asked our general manager, is it a problem to have to do an annual review for identify non-complying securities?
Yeah.
Or the finance manager. Is it a burden? Ms. Fritz?
I'm sorry, I was looking
is it
at
a burden?
definitions of the word. So
Is it a burden to have an annual requirement that the general manager or designee review the portfolio to identify securities that do not comply?
I mean, I don't think,
No.
Okay.
And I do believe we do this quarter. I mean, I think this is happening continuously along with the investment advisors. So I do not think it's a burden
Well,
for the
let's
general
move ahead.
manager specifically.
That'd be a shell.
Okay, yeah, it would be a
Do
shell.
we need to extend?
Let's try, because we're almost done with this, I think. We could probably make it. Do I hear any more discussion? I think we're actually pretty close. A motion?
Somebody. I would move that we adopt the updated investment policy with the changes we've discussed. And would you like them articulated?
Ms. Dodson, I think you have them down. You have the list, the listing of the changes on, well, the definition, bid price and basis point have their own headings. The list on page 4, the second 4 becomes a 5, should become shall in number 9 on page 4, page 6. And I believe that leaves everything
And on
else
page
the same.
484, we reference GC 536.
Yeah, we put the GC in there. If you have all those, fine. Do you have a second on that?
Second.
Yeah, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the new updated investment policy with the changes noted. Can I have a roll call, please?
Director Thomas.
Aye.
Vice President Scott.
Aye.
Director Dean.
Aye.
Director Farmer.
Sure, why not?
President Gray.
Aye. One more thing, future agenda items. This is the time for us to suggest any items that are not already on the docket. Maybe hopefully we can just do this pretty quickly. Ms. Dodson, I mean, if you could tell us what we have coming up. This would be in July, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
this
just
would be in July.
and this will also go out in my letter if you're trying to shave a minute off.
What?
It'll go out in my GM letter.
It's being the
Future agenda
GM letter.
items.
Yeah, do people need to hear this, or is it's coming out? That's coming out today, tomorrow. So if not, does anybody else have anything that they want to bring up?
Ms. Dotson's going to email it to us
Yeah, so
anyway.
I already emailed it to you guys.
Okay, great, excellent. So we can take care of it. There's no future agenda items to be presented. This meeting is adjourned. I don't.